Greetings from the new Simply Hearing. Like everyone, we've made a lot of changes. We've always loved telling you about the teamwork and rapport that you find here, but now, for the sake of medical safety, we offer 4 types of services by appointment only. There's lots to be happy about with a new, more precise appointment plan made just for your needs. We also have a new, more transparent pricing structure. Start your path for better hearing and better life.
Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hi, I'm Bob from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, as a family-owned company, our goal has been simple: to give our neighbors of the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick out the perfect appliances. We'll take care of everything throughout the sale, delivery, and installation process. And we even have our own in-house service department. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by Meganet Communications. Meganet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their #1 goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
Okay, I call this July 26th Select Board meeting to order, and I guess we'll just start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So for recognition, did we have something in particular that we wanted to discuss tonight on recognition? Anybody have anything that they feel they wanted to recognize?
Just announcements.
Yeah.
Well, if I could just recognize our personnel department and the school district's personnel department went through all of the applications for our affirmative action diversity officer, and it was a long process, and I participated in the final interviews, and they went really well, and we moved someone ahead. But it was a long process. There was a lot of work. There were a lot of layers. So I just wanted to recognize both Denise Coleman and Juani Santa, who did the bulk of the work.
And they started with, I think, 11 candidates, was it?
Yes.
Huh.
And we did 3 on, I think it was last Tuesday.
Okay.
So.
And I have a recognition that was requested by Kathleen Haynes, who's a big advocate for accessibility. And Kathleen reminded me that on the 26th, today, is actually the 30th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act. So that's an important thing. It's good to recognize that.
Absolutely.
Where would people with disabilities be if we didn't have that act, making us remember every time we fix a road to make it accessible, or a doorway, or whatever it is that used to be barriers, and now those barriers are coming down, so that's good. Thank you, Kathleen, for reminding me.
And it also assists with kids in schools, for kids with disabilities, and recognizing them and designing a federal agreement.
Right.
Under the IEP process.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And then another one for an announcement, we've been receiving some emails, and not a lot of emails, but some, raising the concern about the heart-shaped painted rocks, sometimes found on what may be town property. And we do have a policy in place about town property, and I think we have something in writing in here today, or is that just an email that we?
Well, we have an email from Town Council Frank Duffy,
Okay,
just expressing the suggestion that any of that public artwork that would appear on private property should, of course, be with the permission of the property owner, but it should not be appearing on public property. And it has been proliferating, and it appears that some portion of those are within the road rights-of-way, which should not be occurring because that is a public space and it's regulated here by the board.
and I get a feeling, I've seen a lot of it on social media, discussion about it, and I think the sense of it is that maybe less is more. Maybe they're not as special if there's too many, and people are just kind of wondering what it's all about. So whoever's out there painting all the rocks, maybe cut back a little, please, and be careful not to do it on town property. Appreciate it. All right, next we have public comment. Is there anyone here tonight for public comment? Yes?
Yes.
Would you like to?
Rosemary, if you could- My name is Rosemary Dreger-Carey from North Falmouth, and thank you for taking my comments tonight. I'm here representing a coalition of organizations that are strenuously opposed. Is it okay to take this?
Please.
Yes.
Strenuously opposed to the proposed multipurpose machine gun range at Joint Base Cape Cod. A coalition of Cape-wide organizations was formed in August 2020 when we first heard about the project from a very small ad in the Cape Cod Times. We banded together to call for a stop to the plan, or at least insist that it receive the comprehensive study a project of this magnitude deserves. Our coalition is not anti-military, and in fact, many of our most vocal members are veterans. We're opposed because we believe this project was inadequately studied, proceeded under the public radar, and is not appropriate for Cape Cod. Our hope tonight is that this board will join this coalition and a growing list of leaders and groups who oppose the plan. I don't need to name all the coalition members: Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative, Association to Preserve Cape Cod, Sierra Club, and mainstream organizations like League of Women Voters, Falmouth, League of Women Voters of Cape Cod, the Wampanoag Tribe. All of these groups, more are joining every day, have looked at the study, have talked to their constituents, and have registered their opposition, and we hope that this board will do this tonight. I can go through the reasons we're opposed to it. The main reason is the risk to our water supply. And at the last select board meeting, Sandy Feynman Silva gave this board a lot of information about the Upper Cape water supply and the legal history of that, why it was founded, to protect, for three purposes: to protect our water supply, to build water infrastructure, and for military activities of the Commonwealth, provided that they are consistent with the habitat and water protection purposes of the Upper Cape water supply. So, in addition to the water impacts, which many scientists and people in the community have submitted reports and letters and documents contesting the environmental assessment that was issued by the Joint Base Cape Cod, they questioned the study, whether it was robust enough, independent, and asked for further comprehensive study, preferably an environmental impact statement. There are impacts on tourism, quality of life, real estate values, environmental justice concerns, which have not been addressed. Those with the means to relocate because they don't like the noise will leave behind people who can't afford to, creating burdens on that population. And there are no studies at all on the impacts on incarcerated people at Barnstable County Correctional Facility who are already experiencing extremely stress levels due to their situation, and to noise, which is notoriously high in prisons. So this has not been studied. We could go on and on. There is plenty of information out there, and we ask that this board deliberate and make a decision tonight, as has the Wampanoag Tribe, the Mashpee Select Board, many, many other groups. Governor Baker just signaled the other day that he thought this plan needed more study and more public input. Senator Susan Moran has called for an immediate suspension of the project, and Senator Moran and Representative Fernandez have introduced legislation that ensures a project like this doesn't get very far without the proper study. And
I'm sure we're way over 2 minutes.
okay. I appreciate your time.
Do the public comment on that tonight is because the only reason it's on our agenda tonight is to discuss potential meeting dates. We're not actually deliberating tonight. If we
Okay.
were, we wouldn't be able to accept public comment on it.
Okay. All right. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is anyone else here for public comment this evening? Okay, thank you very much. Summary of actions for 7:15, and that's right on time. Application for 4 special one-day wine and malt liquor licenses at Highfield Hall, 56 Highfield Drive, Falmouth. Sunday, August 8th, 21, August 15th, 21, August 22nd, 21, and September 19th, 21.
I move approval for all 4 dates.
Second.
Any more comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. B is application for a special one-day wine and malt liquor license, Food and Truck Festivals of America, Cape Cod Food, Truck, and Craft Beer Festival, Cape Cod Fairgrounds, Saturday, August 7th, 2021.
I move approval.
Second.
Now, I would say we had one comment from the Fire Rescue Department that they hadn't received the application yet.
Yes.
And I would say if we approve this, it's going to be conditional upon having that application in a timely fashion, which actually should be like already done.
Yesterday.
Correct.
They need that like tomorrow morning or within the next couple of days, whatever.
I would
you
just,
think.
if you could make that as a condition of approval, I think we'd be in good shape.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and we can just add it to the conditions that are already noted on this.
Okay, very good.
But that would be an edit to the
So we'll
version that we have.
move as amended,
As conditioned.
as conditioned.
Condition.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have application for a secondhand dealer license, Cape Kids Treasures, Falmouth Plaza, Davis Straits, Suite 00011, Falmouth, September 19th through September 28th, 2021.
I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 2 is administrative orders. Vote to approve water main extension agreement and easement to serve Dillon's Way, East Falmouth. Is there a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Second.
Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay, subdivision. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Very well, all in favor. Vote to approve a grant of license to Margaret J. Duncan and Alexander D. Frankel to maintain a wood post and chain structure within the layout of Bell Tower Lane, a public way, as it ends at the grantee's residence at 18 Bell Tower Lane. So I'm actually the contractor on this job, so I'm gonna step out of here. If you could discuss this with the board. It's, I can tell you what it is if it's not clear in the plans, but,
Does the board have any questions?
No. I'm
I have
familiar
no
with it.
questions. I think this is a historical, position that just happens to be in the road right away. And we have situations like this all over town. And this one just seems like a pretty innocuous one to allow them to continue to maintain what they already have there.
So can I have a
correct?
motion?
So I move that we approve this
Second.
license.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Doug?
the next one is gonna be put on hold. It's not ready. It was a mistake on my part to not realize that they hadn't actually voted that for recommendation, so we'll discuss that at a future date, if ever.
Sorry, this is the Arts Alive?
No, this is the vote to execute a letter to Governor Baker regarding Brayton Point potential island bulk freight.
Gotcha.
They hadn't done their outreach yet prior to the meeting of last week, and they voted to do a little more investigation before bringing it to us, and it's questionable whether it might not return at all, but we'll see.
That's Fall River?
It's Somerset.
Well, it's the other side of the river.
Okay. Okay, special events, recurring recommended is Arts Alive, Arts Falmouth, Library Lawn, Peg Noonan Park, Shore Street Extension, Friday, September 10th, 21, Sunday, September 12th, through September 12th, 21. The one thing that I noticed that with the timing of it is September 11th is not a national holiday, but often people do put up flags now. It's a kind of become a sort of a patriotic day, and if we're gonna take the flags down and put up the Arts Alive flags, it's just, not to say we can't do it if that's our decision, but just to beware that that's
It's because it's the week of Labor Day?
No, September 11th.
Oh,
Yeah.
9/11, excuse me.
Yeah, we have the ceremony at the fire department traditionally.
right. So it is a weekend that we usually have the American flags up. Lately, we've been keeping it up all summer until September 11th weekend, I think, and
And we can't do both?
I don't know, how would we, if we take maybe
They're
we could have
asking for
every other
banners.
one?
Yeah, we could alternate.
Every other one? Well, that's not a bad idea. Do you think we should suggest that?
Yeah, I think we should. That's really, the sign approval, isn't that later on in our agenda? So we can discuss it now, but it's.
Okay, yeah,
So we probably should act on it
I got you right.
appropriately.
Okay, so we'll just approve the event now, or not, if whatever we vote.
I move approval for both of these dates.
Second.
All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any further discussion on that? I guess not.
Great event.
Okay, sign variance request, promotional signage, connect with the Arts Falmouth, flags on poles along Main Street. So, do you think that's the compromise then? We'll put every other flag,
Well,
every other American?
I think that's right.
Any-
That sounds
Just
reasonable.
inform them.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve in that
So moved.
amended fashion?
Okay,
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
thank you.
Sign variance request, off-premise promotional signage for a special event, Buzzards Bay Watershed Ride. It's the same thing they did last year, I believe. I didn't notice any difference.
Yeah, the only concern I have is just the number of large banners. And they said 6 to 8, or I mean, and how far ahead of the event they're displayed. I don't like to see lots of event banners put up way before an event. So, I would really like to ask them to do just 2 weeks before the event. I think that's enough time for people to pass those different points and, get the idea that something's coming up. They're asking for 6 to 8 weeks. I think that's too long, personally. I just don't like to clutter the town up with signs, but
I
That's
think
my opinion.
I tend to agree with you there,
I would agree
Sam.
with you as well.
That's a good point.
So I would just change their 2 weeks to 2 weeks before the event, within that 2-week window, rather than the 6 to 8 weeks. I certainly support the event. It's a great event, and it's nice for them to keep reminding everybody of the importance of managing our Buzzards Bay environment.
Okay, and if they want to come back and ask us for reconsideration, they can, but I think that's a good suggestion, Sam.
Okay, well, with that edit or amendment, I would move approval of this event, of this sign, of the signs in support of this event.
Okay,
Second.
Second by Nancy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's see. Request for a waiver of special event fee for Arts Alive. Now, that's a tricky one because we're asking the DPW to put up their flags, and then take them down after the event.
Well, they would have to reimburse DPW for that. That's
Okay,
not part of
that's not part of
the
the fee.
sign fee. That's overtime work on the part of
Okay,
Works.
And I think we do have an email that addresses that.
Yes, yeah, we do.
okay. Any other, is there a motion to approve to begin with, begin the discussion?
Yes, I move that we approve this permit fee for Arts and Life.
The waiver of?
The waiver of, and I guess it's up to 75% of the fee can be waived under our
I
reg.
believe so. What we usually say is whatever's allowable by our
Right.
policy.
Possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Chair, if we
Yes.
I would, just as a suggestion, on the previous, the Buzzards Bay Coalition Watershed Ride and the signs, we could change the conditions under their permit and put that 2-week requirement in there, if that works.
I
Just
think
as a
we
way-
did that verbally, but,
I know we did, but I'm just trying to figure out how to document it and send it to them, and just simply say this is revised.
do you have a suggestion for that, Mr. Suso?
Hey, we can write it in, or with Diane's help tomorrow, we can make certain that that's part of what's transmitted to them
Okay.
on behalf of the board.
Okay, thank you.
Ongoing Community Development Block Grant, CDBG program, 15 minutes. Welcome.
Do we want to read the legal notice, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Before we, we're a few minutes early, but as long as that's agreeable to the board.
Okay.
Close enough.
Which one is it?
The lower right.
Okay. Town of Falmouth Public Hearing Notice. Town of Falmouth Community Development Block Grant Public Hearing. Falmouth Select Board will conduct a public hearing regarding this ongoing Community Development Block Grant Program. The hearing will be held Monday, July 26, 2021, at 7:30 p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room, Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, Massachusetts, 02540. Projects currently being funded through this block grant include small business grants approved through the EDIC, as well as food-related services and vocational assistance provided through the Falmouth Service Center. Do I have to read the whole thing?
Well,
The EDIC Small Business
Ideally.
Grants project is now 50% complete, and under the estimated budget, the Falmouth Service Center project is now 25% complete and under the estimated budget. Any person or organization having questions, comments concerning the CDBG program and ongoing activities will have an opportunity to be heard. Persons who require special accommodations should contact the Falmouth Select Board prior to the hearing date at townmanager@falmouthma.gov. Persons who wish to attend and comment on the CDBG program may do so by joining the meeting. Comments can also be submitted in writing. They should be submitted to the Falmouth Select Board, 59 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, Mass. 02540, or by email at selectboard@falmouthma.gov by 3 p.m. on Friday, July 23rd, 2021. Posted July 16th, 2021.
Mr. Chairman, I should also note that you have a narrative summary in your board packet from our Economic Development Planner, Michaela Shoemaker. That
Yes.
summarizes some additional details of that program in preparation in anticipation of the second public hearing.
Does this also need to be read?
No,
Okay.
just
I
wanted
think-
to note for the record.
I think Mike's going to tell us
You have
all about
received
it,
that.
right? Thank you, welcome.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much. Michael Glasso. I'm the former chairman and member of the board of the Falmouth EDIC. I want to thank you very much for having us here this evening to give you an update on the grant program. I also want to thank the administrative staff, Julian and Peter, Tom, Michaela. This has really been a great partnership between the town and the EDIC and the state. Of course, our executive director, Michael DeGiano, who just came in, and Lynn Broderick, so a lot of people who worked on this grant. So we put together a little team to review the applications as they came in, consisted of myself, Michael Kasparian, and Mark Lowenstein from SCORE, so everyone got a fair review. We were granted $160,000. 11,000 of that approximately was used for administrative cost. And to date, we have issued 12 grants of approximately $10,000, so it's $120,000 in grants to our small businesses in town who desperately needed it. And although we have about 29,000 left, we anticipate that those will go quickly, and that if anyone who is still interested watching at home, they can contact the Falmouth EDIC at 508-548-7440. I know that you received some emails from some of the recipients who obtained the grants. They're very grateful to you and to everyone who worked on this. It's really helped them survive through COVID. I don't think we're through yet. I think even though we see a lot of businesses that are very busy this summer and doing well, remember a lot of those businesses had to close early, not able to keep their normal hours because of lack of employees. So I think that we're going to still see some more applications coming in. So the businesses had to demonstrate a loss of business from 2019 to 2020 due to COVID. Use of the grants funds were very flexible. They could use it for rent, utilities, payroll, supplies, special equipment. Of the 12 businesses that have received the awards, approximately a total of 20 employees. So the requirement is that you have to have at least, you can't have more than 5 employees. Most of them are using the funds to pay rent and their utilities. So again, if you think that you have a business that may still qualify, please contact us. It's been a great partnership. We've really enjoyed it. And just to conclude, Mike DeJohn, who is here, has been our executive director for a number of years. He is leaving us, but I want to make sure he's recognized for doing a great job on putting this program and other programs together for the EDIC, and he's available to answer any questions. So thank you very much.
And if I could piggyback, Lynn Broderick, the administrative assistant,
Yes,
is also
there's
leaving.
Lynn, yep.
And the two of them have done an outstanding job. I know that Carol McKeon, who represents the League of Women Voters here in town, complimented them and said that she thought that the EDIC had been much more efficiently and effectively managed over their tenure. So thank you so much for all your contributions to Falmouth.
Yes.
Would you like to share any comments with us?
Michael?
First of all, thank you all for the kind words. And I will say on the CDBG program, I don't think Michael mentioned this, but we opened the portal on March 1st. And, you know, as of today, we've got about 80% of the monies awarded, which on a new program like that, something that we had never handled before and the town had never handled before. And I think Michaela Shoemaker did a great job working with us and working with the state. I think Tom had already mentioned that. Really, I think Michael had said it all. And I just want to say I've enjoyed working with the board over the last couple of years, and also the EDIC. And Sam, you'd mentioned Lynn Broderick. She is a partner in this, and she did a fantastic job and was very much responsible for getting the awards out and the paperwork all lined up. There was kind of a lot of paperwork involved, but she did a great job tracking it. So I want to thank you all very much.
Thank you for your service during this critical time. It's certainly been very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think Town Planner Tom Bott.
Yes.
Mr. Bott as well.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Tom Bott. I'm the town planner here in Falmouth, Mass. And while it's been stated before, this program really wouldn't have been effective as it was without Michaela Shoemaker's help. The grant was sort of announced. It was obviously extraordinary times. And so the agency that created this was sort of figuring out things on the fly. And a lot of that was based upon Michaela following up them frequently and trying to clarify a lot of these things. So she really has done an exceptional job at putting this thing together. And without her, we wouldn't be here talking about how good things have been. So while it's been referenced before, I just want to make sure we're aware that she's taken care of a great load of stuff on this, and it's been my pleasure to have her working on it. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We did receive some emails from, one from Diane Edelberg, the Fantastic Getaways, and it was a pretty nice letter that she shared the fact that she was kind of on the edge there and had exhausted her funds, and this might just be just enough to get her back on her feet, which is really good to hear. Previously, we received another email from Fran Mario, I think is how you say it, Byway Barber, and she ended her letter by saying, "This is one appreciative barber," and that was really nice. Just it's nice to see this positivity during this difficult times. So thank you guys for what you did there.
Mr. Chairman, could I also note that the entire grant amount was $320,000, and of course, we've focused on the EDIC portion, which we had the pleasure of working with our colleagues at EDIC. There's also a companion piece of $160,000 that is going to the Falmouth Service Center to assist residents on vocational issues and other related, really emergency assistance that's needed. So we're delighted to be working with our friends at the Service Center to benefit residents with that amount of money as well. So that's really a dual piece to the CDBG grant, and we appreciate very much the opportunity to pass this assistance through. And I don't know if there are any other public comments, Mr. Chairman, perhaps.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other comments on this program?
I just wanted to make one comment that I noted in Mr. Galasso's summary, and that was the 35,000 of that 160 for vocational assistance, which I thought was really a great thing for training or retraining people during this time.
In case their type of employment is kind of
Maybe going away.
It might shift.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next on our agenda.
We need a motion to close the hearing.
Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And so
Do you
next,
have any actions to continue this, or is that just, does it do that automatically?
It does it automatically. This was just a required second public hearing, just to take comments about how it's going as we are participating through the process, so we're good to go.
Thank
thank you, sir. Next, we have application for multiple amendments to an all-alcoholic common victualler license, Black Dog Tavern Company Incorporated, doing business as the Black Dog Heights Cafe, located at 465 Grand Avenue, Falmouth. Amendments include change of manager, change of corporate structure, change of officers, change of corporate name, change of ownership interest, and issuance of transfer of stock, new stockholder. And I think there's another public hearing notice that needs to be read.
Do you want me to read the
Yes, please.
liquor license?
Well, don't we just simply cite that it was published at a particular time in a particular article, in a particular publication?
That seems sufficient to me. Is
Well,
that
we
correct?
can.
Is that not technically
This one's a
correct?
short, this one's a short one. You might want to just err on the
Fine.
I thought we read the notice.
Okay.
I know we have been generally.
Let's go
I'll
for
go
it.
fast, Sam, promise.
No, it's
Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended. The Black Dog Tavern Company, Inc., doing business as the Black Dog Heights Cafe, has applied for multiple amendments to its all-alcoholic common victualler license located at 465 Grand Ave, Falmouth, Mass., including the change of manager, change of corporate structure, change of corporate name, change of officers, change of ownership interest, and issuance transfer of stock, new stockholder. A hearing will be held in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, July 26th, 2021, at 7:30 p.m. on the above application. And it looks like
publication date.
it was
July
in on
16th.
July 16th, 2021. It was published in the Falmouth Enterprise.
I'm sorry, that was the piece that I thought we just mentioned, not the actual reading of the posting itself. So, no, we definitely needed to read that part on the hearing. Sorry.
And welcome.
Oh, my.
Good evening. My name is Albert DiNapoli. I represent the applicant. I have with me the proposed manager of record, Robin Pacillo, and her husband, Dan. If they need to be addressed, if you'd like to speak to the manager of record. I have the affidavit of notice of mailing to the abutters, the certified abutters list, the liquor license hearing notice, registered receipts, and return registered receipts. I'll pass these forward. Who would like to receive them?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Those are all the originals.
Did Appreciate that.
As you note, there are 6 things before you today, all changes relative to the Black Dog Tavern Company, Inc. And maybe we'll take them in the direction of how they probably line up. The first one being a change of the corporate name. And the Black Dog Tavern Company, Inc. Changed its corporate name when it's changed its corporate structure to Black Dog Tavern Company, LLC. This is a simple change from an Inc. to an LLC, so it incorporates both the change of name, change of corporate structure. I did provide the board, and for the sister board, with a flow chart. That's at page 4 of the application, and maybe the best way is to walk through that. You'll see that in that, the original president was Robert S. Douglas Jr., and the chief operating officer was Dan Pasillo. After changing its name and corporate structure, the president of the newly formed entity, now it's the same company because it has the same federal identification number. It's not changing anything by way of taxes or federal identification. All of this is done internally. The president and CEO now is Dan Pasillo, and the manager of the LLC is Black Dog Enterprises, LLC. So there's been a change of officers in that Dan Pasillo is now the president and CEO. Now, Dan has been with the company for over 20 years. He was the chief operating officer originally. He is staying on board as the president and CEO of the company. He also, as we walk down, you will see he's the majority owner of Black Dog Partners, LLC, which is a 60% owner of Black Dog Enterprises, LLC. So if we take the next step down, so the change of directors, the directors are from Black Dog Enterprises, LLC. Now, the Enterprises entity is the 100% owner of the Black Dog Tavern Company, LLC. And through that, there are 2 entities owning that company. One is Douglas Holdings Limited, LLC, and they own 40% of Black Dog Enterprises, LLC. That Holdings Limited is generally the 6 Douglas family trusts, which were the 100% owners of the Black Dog Tavern Company, Inc., which is the present license holder. So now, instead of being 100% owners, they are, through these different corporations, 40% owners of the holding company that own the newly named company. There was another entity that was formed called Black Dog Partners, LLC. And this was basically a vehicle in order to have investments made into the Black Dog enterprise. And in this Black Dog Partners, LLC, there are 2 managers of the LLC, Mr. Pasillo and Mr. Michael Reardon. The ownership of that entity is owned 48.3% by Dan Pasillo, and then there's 23 other individual investors. They make up 51.6% of that. So the majority of the, if you will, license holder, once the change of name and all these changes have been approved, is owned by not only the original 6 Douglas family trusts, but by Dan Pasillo, who was the chief operating officer. So for operational purposes, things are pretty much in the original owners and operators of the entity. Much of this structure was to make a change for the Douglas companies to step back in ownership, for Dan to step forward, and to bring in some new money through the investors. And therefore, we're before you with these 6 changes, all in the multiple amendment application. As I said, one of them is a change of manager, and we have Robin Pasillo, who's here today to answer any questions. Robin has been in the restaurant business maybe most of her life, if not all of her life. She has worked in a number of different places in Falmouth, and she's been with Black Dog for the last 3 years as just working. She's going to be, if the board approves, the manager of record.
And we always ask our new liquor license managers to speak to us if possible. And the question that I've been trained by former select board member Doug Jones is to ask, are you aware that you are personally responsible for the liquor license as the manager of record?
I sure am.
And anything that
Totally.
happens there that is within your control, you're going to be the one that we call to ask about?
Yes.
No matter how many managers and owners there are.
Yep, I understand.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
And how long have you been tip certified and in this liquor management position?
I just retook the tip certification a few months ago, but I've done it several times. I used to work at Chappie Grill and Osteria La Chavetta, so I've done it a few times.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. So you got
Yep.
quite a bit of experience. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr.
DiNapoli.
DiNapoli? Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I move that we close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Okay.
You don't have to vote on.
And we have to close it.
Second.
So that's a motion to close the hearing. All in favor of closing the hearing?
You want to ask for any public comment?
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, good
Is there
point.
any
Close the
public
hearing.
comment, either for or against this application?
Excuse me, I jumped a
Thank
step.
you. I see no public comment and nobody raising a hand, so all in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
And now, is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the application for multiple amendments for, oh dear, what's the new name? Black Dog Tavern Company LLC?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, any further comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. sounds
You
like
don't
we're
have
all
to
set.
note each of the changes just because you approving the application for multiple amendments, so that includes all 6.
Yeah, I
It
think
covers all 6, right?
Aye.
They're out.
it's a single
they're
vote in one
outlined.
motion, is that correct? sir?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I think we got it all.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you.
and have a good night.
Here's the,
Thanks for
stuff we received
providing
from
such
Mr.
good
DiNapoli.
businesses here in Falmouth. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good luck.
We're gonna have to skip because Scott's probably still down in the
Yeah, he
Board of Health.
probably is.
So let's just come back to that when he's available.
Okay, we'll postpone the discussion on COVID-19 issues. Report on town hiring. Mr. Suso, would you like
Yeah,
to?
thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Had a question raised at the last meeting regarding some hiring-related issues, and we have with us Denise Coleman, our HR director. The board also received some narrative information from the Public Works Director, Peter McConerty, who's with us here this evening, Police Chief Edward Dunn, and Fire Chief Tim Smith. I think Chief Dunn will be with us a little bit. He may have been tied up. Tim Smith's not able to be with us because he's out of the office at the moment.
Yep.
But Denise has a PowerPoint she can present.
Yeah, well, Chief Smith actually already presented to us and gave us an update just the last meeting that we had. so
Correct.
And
I
another
think we're
written,
well
And-
informed.
yeah,
And he did do a written
another written.
summary in
Yep.
your
Which was
packet, yeah.
actually very informative. The
Very.
written- The
Indeed.
written summary was
It was very helpful,
very
I
good.
thought.
And any members of the public that want to review these written summaries, our packet is available on the town website. If you go to Select Board at Falmouth MA, how would they find that? Town of Falmouth?
Town of Falmouth, yeah, they
You just go look up the Select Board and the packet
go to
is
our
right there.
website and go to Select Board under our website, and the packet's there.
I found the explanation by both chiefs and Public Works Director Peter McConerty. The written form was really easy to comprehend. Sometimes when they explain it to you and you're in person, and it goes over your head a little bit, but when it's in writing, it's very clear.
That's it.
You can always refer back to it, which I find very helpful when
Right.
questions come up.
Here's page down
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm Denise Coleman, the HR director for the town. So Julian mentioned he had asked me to provide a brief recruitment update. So I'd like to do that for you today. What I'd like to do is give you an overview of the town's recruitment process and talk about how long it takes to fill positions, some of the challenges that we've faced, and also how we're addressing these challenges. To give you a brief overview of the recruitment process, we have a centralized team approach at the town. Once a position becomes vacant, we review the job description and we ensure that we've captured all the core competencies. Then we post the job expeditiously. We work with the hiring manager to learn more about what associations they belong to ensure we have a good presence. And then we screen the applications, assist with developing interview questions, assess the candidates' interviews, conduct background checks, and then once we have consensus, we ultimately make a hiring and salary recommendation to the town manager. So when Julian asked me to provide this update, I wanted to talk a little bit about how long it takes to fill a position. What we did is we took a look at how long it took to fill a position before the pandemic, and it averaged 77 days from the time the position was posted until a person started. It took us 77 days. Now, as a result of the pandemic, the average time to fill takes about 107 days, so that's a 30-day increase, about a 38% increase. So there's several reasons that we can attribute this to. What we find most difficult to fill are the DPW, fire, and police positions, but before I get into that, just want to tell you a little bit about some of the struggles we've faced with our seasonal positions. So we have several vacancies that are still occurring now. I think mainly what's happened is we're competing with unemployment, and I think that's probably no news to any of you. There is, for some people, not an incentive to work. So we also are competing, for example, with our laborers, with construction, private sector positions that are booming. Also, just to give you an overview, we had difficulty filling our assistant town planner. We went out to post 4 times before we finally found the successful candidate, and I'm pleased to report that he has started. We also had some challenges with our assistant health agent. That position, what we found is we got a lot of entry-level candidates that had no experience in the health industry, but what we decided to do is hire someone that had the most potential and to invest a good amount of training, which we did, only to find that this person found another position closer to home after the person gained that experience with us. The superintendent of water, I think you probably recall, that's a very highly technical and professional position. We actually had a candidate that accepted the position, came before you, and was appointed only to find out the day before he was supposed to start that he got a counter offer and he left, or he didn't start with us. Firefighter and police officers have been really difficult to fill. They're governed by civil service, so civil service provides a list of qualified candidates, and they've been behind in doing that, and there's also been a shortage of fire and police academies. So it can take up to a year to fill those positions and get someone fully trained.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes. Sure.
Under this topic, to what extent is the unaffordability of housing in Falmouth a factor?
That's a really good question. It was something I was going to bring up right now. I wanted to talk about how we're addressing the issue. So one of the things that we're trying to do is expand our job searches nationwide, for example, for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, and within New England for our building commissioner. But I wanted to caution you that what we're finding is even though we're doing that search and we're expanding it, we are competing with, difficult, high costs living here and costs of housing. So it is something to keep in mind. We've had several candidates that have been outside of Falmouth that had to turn down the position once they learned about the costs of housing here in Falmouth.
If I could interrupt you for a second while on the same thing. I was just listening to NPR radio this evening on the way here, and some towns are so desperate to find people to work that they're offering sign-on bonuses up to like $10,000. And then a local restaurant will offer free gift certificates, you know, 'cause it's like a community effort to get people to come to their towns. It's like, that's what we're competing with.
Yeah, it is. It's a very difficult time. You see all the signs, you know, the help wanted signs. Businesses are not able to operate in full capacity because of this. So one of the things I mentioned in terms of how we address the issue, I mentioned expanding the search. Another is to review our compensation plans, and we've had several studies done that indicate that we are below market. So what we've done is worked with our budget and through the collective bargaining process would like to try to adjust where we sit in the market. Another thing that we're doing is we're trying to engage our candidates throughout the process. It does take a little while to get through our process, so having regular contact with them so they don't lose interest is another, you know, effort that we're making. I don't know if you have other questions?
No, but just, I'm very interested to remind viewers at home, if they really want to understand the challenges, read the report from the fire chief and the police chief and the Department of Public Works that are in the packet. Very informative. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask one question. Because affordability of housing is such a big issue, I guess I'm wondering whether adjusting the salary and benefit scale is really going to make up that gap. Because it's really become a serious, you know, impediment at this point.
Right.
Otherwise, and then it's maybe transportation costs if they're willing to, you know, live in Wareham or South.
So I don't believe that the salaries that we try to adjust will fix the housing issue, but it's a step in the right direction.
Sure.
And, you know, hopefully we can build upon our hiring by getting our wages in line with the market.
Yep.
We'll have to do all of the above.
Right.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, if I might, I just want to thank and acknowledge Denise for her fine work and the work of her staff in Human Resources, with all the department heads that are heavily involved in the interviewing, the search process, the essential recruitment aspects, and ultimately in the recommendation on the hiring of candidates that comes forward to me. And they spend a lot of time there, and as Denise has recounted on multiple occasions, we've had to duplicate those efforts, sometimes do them in several occasions. In the case of the assistant town planner, we had multiple occasions where we had to advertise and go into a standalone search process or follow up on a search process. So very time consuming and a lot of duplication and a lot of frustration as a result of that. So we appreciate the terrific work and the steadfast and diligent work on your part, Denise, and that of your staff. And Peter and his fellow department heads, as you've noted, Denise, police, fire, and public works are really the big three in terms of town side hiring and some positions that remain open going forward. But we are committed to continuing to work diligently to keep getting the job done. So we appreciate that support very much.
Thank you very much.
I want to mention just one more thing. I was trying to think of the department heads that we have, how many of them actually live in Falmouth, which of course is the goal. And I don't know, far more we've had to waive that, you know, local resident requirement over and over again. And I mean, so I think we've been dealing with this for quite some time, and this is really kind of just getting worse and worse. So, but I just wanted to mention that. I could only think of 4 department heads or executives that actually live in town. The rest of them all live outside of Falmouth.
Right.
Each of the big three that are we're referring to tonight, they all live in
They all
Falmouth, of
do,
course.
yes.
So I want to note that and recognize Peter, for instance, relocated from another residence to the town of Falmouth during his tenure here as an employee. So
And
we
by the way,
appreciate that level of commitment.
Of those that actually live in Falmouth, I think they live here, you know, 15, 20 years ago. So they got their stake in real estate back when it was affordable. And they're here, they've been moved up through the ranks, and that's why they're still here and why they can afford to live in Falmouth. It's not because they necessarily get the salary to compensate for that difference in pricing. So
Right.
it's a serious, serious problem.
Angela?
I had a question, sorry, kind of going back a little bit, thinking about compensation, and you mentioned the difficulty hiring seasonal, and you said that we're competing with unemployment. So to make sure I understand, what we're offering compensation, meaning that we're about par with what unemployment pays for the same hours, or the same time?
Well, it depends on, how much the person was making to determine how much they would actually receive through unemployment. But, in general, we are finding with the entry-level positions, this could be a good indication for why.
Okay, so the entry-level and seasonal positions specifically is what you were talking
Correct.
about. Okay, yeah, thank you.
And I think that unemployment is going to be terminating in September, is that right?
Correct.
Additional 300, yeah.
The additional 300 is supposed to end in September.
Right.
But if you can get a job in construction, you can make a heck of a lot more money.
You can, huh? That's a theory.
Well, as an owner, it might be different, right?
It's just a tough year to make money. There's so many complications.
And I think it's important to point out the impact on the DPW in terms of seasonal workers and doing what they need to do. And so when we hear people being concerned about things not being done, we need to be able to say that
Well,
part of it is they're really short-staffed.
And they're
And
cutting
they're
back
doing it-
on the construction jobs and doing only the maintenance. And you've got the parks superintendent out cutting trees because he's a great worker, but
Yep.
it's just tough,
They
times
don't
are
have
tough
the
right now
bodies.
for help, so that's the way it goes.
Yeah, a lot of
Thanks.
people are stepping up, doing a great job.
Right.
So thank you, Peter, and thank you, Denise.
Thank you very much.
Denise.
Anything else on that subject?
Sir, I see that Scott McGann has been able to join us.
He is, and Senator Susan Moran is here too. That's great. Almost on time. Can we hear from Scott, and then we'll get to you? What's the latest?
Hi, so does health department count as the big four? Are we the fourth out of the big three? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So where are we? Well, I've started to do the FCTV presentations on a weekly basis.
Everybody knows who you are,
Well, I'm
but tell us
Scott
anyway.
McGann, health agent, sorry, I should.
Okay.
So I began redoing the FCTV once a week, just because there was a lot of questions and confusions on people throwing out numbers that would call me that they've heard this and heard that. As soon as I hear that, I think the best thing to do is to do the weekly presentation. That way it puts, gets, kind of lets it out what's really happening. So, things are a lot, a bit different from when we talked, I think, on the 12th. Like I said, May we had 42 cases, June we had 3, July we're at 28. Of the 28, 8 are all associated with one long-term care facility. We have a cluster there. So 20 of them would be, everybody else who's not in a long-term care. So that is an increase. Of those 20, 15 were unvaccinated, 5 were vaccinated. If you get what they call the vaccine efficacy, it's about 85% for the month. And I use July 1st because I'll talk a little bit about Delta. We've all heard about Delta. Delta is much more transmissible. And that's about the time it transitioned to more predominantly Delta. Delta is definitely here. It's upwards of 90% of the country. It moves like wildfire. It's about 1,000 times more viral load. There's more chance of getting it. So the vaccine seems to be definitely be working based in Falmouth, looking at the efficacy number. It's definitely, we have more cases. I would say that 5 unvaccinated when we have a population of 21,700 people that are vaccinated, and we have no guidance, no masks, and we can cram in, is actually not that bad of a number, right? If you think about it, 5 out of, like I said, we're just under 21,700 something vaccinated people. That's actually not, I think, 5 for a month. We're well into July. Isn't a horrible number. Now, you've heard about what happened at Provincetown. They're up to some 400 and something cases associated with 32 different establishments, and about 70% of those people were vaccinated. So vaccine breakthrough does occur, and it makes sense with Delta because Delta, with a high viral load, to give you an analogy, if you were playing a video game and level 1 is easy, right, and level 4 is hard, the high viral load makes your immune system work a lot faster. It has to work really quick. And the threshold for where you would be symptomatic and asymptomatic, you're starting at a much higher level. We talked about viral load early in the pandemic. You're starting generally with a higher viral load with Delta, and that's why we have more of cases. But I think we're holding our own. We got high vaccination numbers. We're averaging still about 100 or so vaccinations per week, 150 or so. We did one at the fairgrounds, so all during the fairgrounds we had a vaccination there for the J&J because, you know, it would be easier with J&J to try to get people to come back when the event's gone, so we used Johnson & Johnson. So we are, you know, at this point holding our own. There is an increase in cases, and so I think I'd best ask you guys if you have any questions, if you want to cover anything specifically with it.
Thanks for the proactive setting up of a vaccination site.
Yeah, it was pretty easy to do, and, you know, so the county did it, the volunteers, the MRC and so forth, so the Medical Reserve Corps. And of course, Wendy's been, at the fairgrounds, been really accommodating. They helped us all winter and spring setting up for the vaccination clinics and actually doing testing out of there, so, as well, so.
We received an email regarding concerns around the Falmouth Road Race. At this point, is there any guidance? Do you have any concerns? It was a fairly detailed email.
Well, the state has not come away from what they've done on the 29th of May. So the guidance, there is no guidance, there is no special, anything coming down at the state. It's been very quiet at the state in terms of changing course. Obviously, the more people, there's obviously an increase in risk, the more people that are here. It is what it is. You know, off the top of my head, I would say the one thing to think about the road race, it's not just the road race, it's people that would be here, you know, the 12 people that rented the small house in the Heights, right, they're going to come anyway. They already paid the money. So I think a lot of the stuff that you would get, the race itself is outdoors, and generally there's going to be some crowding at the beginning that could be mitigated, and we'll need to look into that. We could talk about that. But I think the event and the mass of people here is still going to be, you know, the main issue with it.
Right.
Would be my way. So I think the ship has sailed in terms of, you know, it's still going to be our busiest weekend whether we have the road race or not, right? And so, you know, a lot of the problems with, you know, maybe overcapacity of restaurants cramming in and people in tight quarters. You know, Provincetown, if everybody's probably been there, is very small buildings, very low ceilings, very tight packed in. You can see where that happens. So that's where your event would be more likely to have a spread as opposed to the race itself. Maybe without, you know, maybe discussions with mitigation at the start line. I mean, at the start. So, but the state's not saying to stop, change course in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
I think you make a good point about the fact that if they've already rented the house, they're likely to come anyways, and if they're not running, they're going to be in the pub. It might be better off to let them run.
Yeah, because if it was a cloudy day, you know, with a cloudy day, what would Main Street look like on road race weekend without the road race when everybody paid for the road race? I mean, there's another way to look at it. You know, can things be done, looked at? Sure. It just, you know, the state's telling us it's still, you know, after March 29th, you know, all guidance is gone. They're not coming at us and saying, cut back large events. They're not saying anything indoors or anything of that matter at this point, so.
Well, it's an email from one person. They don't live in Falmouth. They're just pointing out to us that, in their opinion, we should be reconsidering, but it's not like we've got any other emails about it. And as you said, it's an outdoor event, so.
Yep, and then the other thing, if you haven't been vaccinated, I'm not going to make you get a vaccine, but if you were waiting for herd immunity's numbers change when the dose, Delta brings the requirement, instead of having to be 70%, because it spreads that much better, that number goes up higher. So it's going to be harder and harder to reach herd immunity. So if people are saying, well, let everybody else take it, I'll just reap the benefit of it, you know, I think they ought to rethink their strategy and get vaccinated, you know.
I think so. 'Cause this Delta,
that's my public service announcement for the day.
the Delta variant makes you more sick than the other versions, doesn't it?
Well, again, it's viral load. It's starting out at that higher number. I mean, I guess you play video games, right? So it's like you start at level 2 and you're shooting laser beams at the aliens, and but if you're starting at level 4, because the viral, it's going to move real fast, real quick.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with this. Your body's just going to start real quick with it. And that's why you tend to have some symptomatic symptoms showing, even if you've been vaccinated. It's just that you had to start at level 6.
Yeah.
You know, you just started at a higher load, and that's, you know, what Delta is. You know, it just breeds more of itself inside each cell.
That's a good analogy. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I have have one on the cyanobacteria blooms in our freshwater ponds. Can you provide any guidance to the public since you have the podium there?
Sure. So, if you're concerned about cyanobacteria in the certain ponds you swim in, you want to sign up with the Association to Preserve Cape Cod's website. You can get it through our website. They're the entity that's testing. They've got the science. They're testing the ponds. It's visual. It looks like, you know, green paint in the water. It's not something you can pick up. It's something that just, it'll turn the water. It's been here forever and a day. As a child, my mother always would tell me, if you're gonna take the dog to the pond, don't swim in the pond if there's the green slime, the scum in there. And so it's something that's been been here forever. The more nutrient load, after rainstorms, we tend to get more of it. So cyanobacteria is a risk for ingestion, especially with dogs, you know, and other animals, so especially dogs, young children. You don't want to swallow it. So they're sampled with if we get complaints, we send them out to sample. They're sampling beaches on a routine basis as well. The county and all the health agents with the APC are meeting with, trying to set up a system. Right now, it's kind of a little spotty. One town's doing it a certain way. This town's trying to get some consistency on how we're doing it. We'll post advisories if we find high levels, but the high levels are not uniformly distributed through the pond. So let's take a Shumet Pond, for example. During the summer, it's usually mash piece problem because our prevailing wind is southwest, so it'll tend to blow the cyanobacteria towards that direction. As soon as late August hits, when we start getting a little bit more north winds out of the north, it tends to move down towards Holly Sands and the Shumet Valley. So it's sort of, and it's not always there, it's just here sometimes and there not. So it's something that's sort of floating around, and it's based on phosphorus and the different nutrients that get into the water, especially after a rainstorm, some hot weather added in, and then we get algal blooms. So they can email us at the health department, or what the best thing to do is to sign up. You go on the APCC's website, I think it's apcc.org, and register for their alerts. So they're testing about 200 ponds in town. I mean, if not in town, on the Cape. So they're testing them, and then they'll rank them. But it's not, you know, a perfect system. So if they're testing yours on Monday, conditions could be different on Friday, or they weren't at the spot where the cyano was. So it's really visual. Everybody needs to know when they go down to the pond, if it looks clear, that sort of darkish, tannin sort of color, then it's safe to swim. And if it's, green, looks like somebody just spilt a gallon of paint in there, you don't want to be swimming, let your kids in there or your dog in there. So, but that's the best way to do it. We also have a link on our website. We've pretty much got everything in there, in their weekly reports. So I think what we had trouble with is messaging. Somebody might be on a pond, and it's hard to know who's on the pond or not. They notify the beach committees or the private semi-public beaches. It's just, so the best thing I tell people to do is just to sign up for it. You'll get an alert of any pond in Falmouth that might have it, so.
But the danger's all through ingestion? Okay, you could walk by the pond, it'll be fine?
Yes, it's an ingestion. The toxins formed by the normal growth of it's a bacteria. All right, so it's the normal toxin that's by their normal light decay, dying off, so forth, is what makes you ill, ingestion-wise.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, can we have Scott touch on mosquito sampling and the West Nile virus?
Sure.
Please.
So we normally get a West Nile virus mosquito, not a case, hit every 2 years or so, every 2 to 3 years. It's usually in the same spot. It's off Woods Hole Road. So that's a normal sampling spot. I think this is probably the 5th or 6th time that we've had it in the last 10 years or 12 years. So we do notify the public that we did have a hit of West Nile virus. That obviously, any given year, you want to watch out for mosquitoes. The rainier the year, the worse the mosquitoes are. Last year, we got lucky. It was very dry. The year before, we didn't get lucky. We had, if you remember, we had the spraying of the Triple E. So it's been a light year for Triple E throughout the state. It's been below average for West Nile. Just people need to know that three main things: don't get bit by mosquitoes by wearing DEET or long clothing, and then always tip out the water in the bird bath and different things you might have in your yard after a rainstorm, because those are the two main things that you need to do to avoid getting bit by a mosquito. It's a very low probability. One sample. It's not something we found again. It's still being sampled. The Cape Cod Mosquito Control Program is treats that area like they treat all the areas. If anybody out there that needs an area they think needs to be treated, you can contact the Cape Cod Mosquito Control Project or us, and we'll link you into there. If you have a body of water or a heavy mosquito population. But they treat the water with a larvicide, and the larvae can't grow. So those programs are always in place every year, and if we get a West Nile, we'll hit that area harder, that's what we've been doing over there on Woods Hole Road. So.
Any other question?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
See you guys.
Next, we're going to have a discussion on the amendment to the Steamship Authority Enabling Act from Senator Susan Moran. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So nice to see all my old friends. Some things have changed, but the room is still a little cold. The audience is still very warm, so appreciate that. Before I get started, if I could ask your indulgence, Mr. Chair, just to comment on Mr. McGann's report from the Joint Committee on Public Health, where I'm vice chair. One of the couple of issues that came up just in terms of personal mitigation, certainly continue to wear a mask if you feel like that's right for you. And the mask availability, one of the things as we come into the potentially higher rates is that we don't have quite the shortages that we did at the beginning of the pandemic. So there are more, N90, the higher, more protective masks, and
right.
Folks can feel more comfortable with those because we do have so many, as it stands right now, for our healthcare workers. So those are just a couple of the points that came out. Sort of remember, how important distancing is and masking. It's still very, very effective.
Right. Thank you.
That being said, I just want to give some information on the legislation that I've filed, and then try to answer a couple of questions if I can. And if we need more information, I'll be happy to get back with you with any questions that I haven't answered. So I am your Plymouth Barnstable State Senator, Susan Moran. I'm here to discuss Senate 2361. It's called an Act Relative to Municipal Equity in Steamship Authority Operations. Just as you, Mr. Chair, seeded the idea for Falmouth's Climate Action Committee to have real give-and-take conversations about alternatives and strategies, we must face the coming replacement of the Bourne and Sagamore bridges as regional transportation issues. Ferry transportation via Steamship Authority is an integral piece of regional transportation and the regional economy. But the enabling legislation itself is a hurdle and sometimes stumbling block to even the beginning of a conversation. When one side of a conversation is virtually powerless, there's little impetus to listen, let alone consider real change. This bill is an avenue for us to work together, both island and mainland towns, to have a true conversation to guarantee the long-term success of the Steamship Authority, to ensure its strength as we meet challenges now and in the future, such as climate change and new bridges. The Steamship Authority relies on something of a partnership between the Cape and the islands. The very purpose of the authority is to facilitate the ongoing link between the port towns and the islands. But a partnership means everyone has a voice. When I hear repeatedly about long traffic delays, potential catastrophic interferences with ambulatory or fire services, dangerous roads, ongoing sleep disruptions from freight traffic at all hours of the day, refusal to consider fuel-saving ferry load consolidation and conservation measures, it becomes clear that something is not working. When constituents tell me that their voices are not heard and they keep asking for change but are met with very little, something's not working. Something in the partnership is broken. So looking more closely at the Steamship Authority structure, it becomes clear why. The weighted vote allows for universal decision-making by the islands. If the islands decide they want to do something and the mainland disagrees, nothing the mainland towns can really do. So I'm proposing a change limited to the voting structure of the board that will guarantee compromise. My change will require that a majority vote of the Steamship Board must include a vote from a mainland town. The voting weight will stay the same. It will still be easier for the islands to reach a majority than the mainland towns, but it takes the first step in ensuring that the voices of port towns must be heard. In plain language, the vote share currently only requires a majority of the weighted vote to pass any measure. In practice, this means that 2 of the 5 towns, Dukes County and Nantucket, are required to pass any measure because their vote shares are 35% each. Any of the towns with a smaller voting weight, which is 10%, require at least 2 votes of the smaller voting shares and a vote of Nantucket or Dukes County to approve a measure. This essentially gives control and veto power to Nantucket or Dukes County. So to give a couple of examples, if we have Dukes County at 35% and Nantucket at 35%, you get 70% under the current legislation and the measure is approved. If we have Dukes County at 35% and Falmouth at 10%, the measure fails. If we have Nantucket at 35%, Falmouth and Barnstable each at 10%, that totals 55%. The measure is approved. And lastly, as an example, if we have Barnstable, Falmouth, and New Bedford each at 10%, that total of 30% fails. The legislation, if approved, would require that a vote meet the 50% threshold plus include a vote from a town with a smaller voting weight to approve an action. For example, Dukes County at 35% and Nantucket at 35% under the current status would be approved, but under the new legislation would fail because it doesn't include one of the smaller districts of the 10%. As opposed to if you had Dukes County at 35, Nantucket at 35, plus Falmouth, you'd have 80% with that smaller voting block, and that would be approved. If you have Barnstable at 10, Falmouth 10, and New Bedford at 10, under the new legislation, that would still fail because there isn't participation by a majority holder, which would be one of the islands. So the very ports that the islands rely on to ship their food, their resources, and the tourists driving the summer season are home also to people who feel that many of their requests for change have been in vain. They feel disregarded and in many cases as if their health and well-being are increasingly threatened. There must be structural change to acknowledge the service and responsibility that the port towns hold in the operations of the Steamship Authority. So I hope you will join me in supporting Senate 2361. There is a hearing this Wednesday at the Joint Committee on Transportation, and if you'd like to know more about how to testify, you can check the State House website or contact me by email at susan.moran@masenate.gov. And I believe some information may have been sent for your packets as well.
Yes. So, I appreciate you taking the initiative to bring this out and to bring this discussion forward, because I agree there's a lot of people, especially Woods Hole folks, that are just feeling like there's nothing they can do to implement any changes. The one thing that I'm anxious about is if we enable this, and if we adopt this, it does kind of give us a veto power. And I wonder how you envision it working in, say, for instance, if the two port city, if the two island board members vote to continue the 5:30 vote, and one Falmouth member might vote to not approve it, that would stop it. Is that correct? Is that
well,
a good example?
The districts with 35% power would still only require one town with 10% authority. So you still would need one of the island towns. And that's still a sizable amount of power, despite the fact that the mainland towns have such a small percentage of the vote relative to population size. So just for meat on the bone of that argument, if you look at U.S. Census data projections for July 2019, the population of each voting entity is as follows in order of size, from smallest to largest. New Bedford, 95,363. Barnstable, 44,477. Falmouth, 30,993. All of those larger mainland towns have the 10% as it stands now. However, Nantucket at 11,399 and Dukes County at 17,333 have the majority, 35%. In addition, you look at the fact that for our commerce, we're all depending on each other. Most passengers from the 2019 statistics were carried from Woods Hole to Vineyard Haven, most automobiles from Vineyard Haven to Woods Hole, and most trucks from Woods Hole to Vineyard Haven. And so it's in all of our financial interest not to cut out one or the other. Because in addition, if the cost of the steamship outweighs the profit, then the towns would have to pay based upon the Enabling Act financial formula. And so this is really legislation that is not discounting the importance of the islands, but is a minimal way of allowing the non-island towns to have a say that really has meaning. And I will say that so many constituents have already reported to me that there is a feeling of receptiveness among the Steamship Board. And in fact, even our own representative, Kate Wilson, had mentioned at one of the hearings that, with climate change coming, and as we look at the Bourne and Sagamore Bridge being reconstructed, and we really need to all have a voice and all look at, just for the benefit of the islands as well. The steamship is their lifeline, but we need to be sure that we're looking at all of the moving pieces and how one thing affects another. There's been a lot of talk about New Bedford, and I know that's one of the things that you've done a particularly good job about outreach on. And that those conversations should continue, and this legislation has been sort of a catalyst for more of those conversations. So in that respect, I'm also pleased that it was filed, and just hope it engenders more positivity.
Great. Questions from the board?
I have a question.
Sure.
Or do you have any feeling how the islands feel about this particular, how they feel about this in general? Have you had any feedback from them?
Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation at the Joint Committee on Transportation, because the conversation has been kind of without us all in the same room. And understandably, there is some trepidation on the part of the islands, feeling, the way the board works now, our lifeline is protected. And we would want to be sure, speaking as an islands member, that if this legislation were to pass, that we would not be cut off, that our lifestyle would not be endangered, that we wouldn't be in a position where we're lacking supplies. And, that's really never been a piece of the conversation, because we are all one economy. And, there certainly, just from our own personal experiences, we know folks from Falmouth and from New Bedford and all of the smaller towns Barnstable so enjoy going to the island and going to restaurants, spending money on shops. We have relatives back and forth. We have business back and forth. We have medical appointments back and forth. So the fear of the island sort of being stuck on the boat without a paddle kind of thing, I understand. You want to be sure that lifeline is protected. This legislation, I think, really just realistically widens the conversation, because I certainly have not filed this in the sense, or heard really anyone consider the legislation and think, well, this would be the means to, really marginalize the islands. And when you look at the fact that one of the islands would need to participate in a vote, I think that's another safeguard. But I certainly appreciate, and I'm very sympathetic with the question, and certainly the Steamship Authority has made good arguments about their concerns so that everyone can hear that as well, because it's just important not only that the mainland towns be heard, but that the island towns be heard as well. I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Well, I certainly appreciate you getting the conversation going. We are having a good dialogue with Martha's Vineyard now, with our task force and other efforts. So we're just sort of getting to know each other in our respective positions, and this will, I think, enhance the conversation.
Well, this board knows better than anyone how important outreach is, and it's something you do very, very well. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and it just was really fun to see everyone.
Great to see you too.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, could I interject one item?
Please.
I just thought it was perhaps fortuitous with Senator Moran able to be with us, as Mr. Chairman and Madam Vice Chair. Senator Moran played a significant role in the gathering we had with the governor and lieutenant governor in the past week here, speaking about affordable housing. And by a fascinating coincidence, we have a report from our Affordable Housing Committee here this evening as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge, while Senator Moran was with us, how much we appreciate her involvement in affordable housing and assistance with that forum. And it really shined an important light on the efforts being made in Falmouth successfully in affordable housing that are just really the beginning of and the continuation of some great work. So
well, I
thought I should mention that.
I appreciate that, but I think the most memorable piece of that was that the governor turned back to you twice about exactly what was going on in Falmouth, and the Cape-wide discussion was ongoing, but we were in Falmouth. So I appreciated that, as former members of boards of selectmen, both the governor and lieutenant governor really wanted the town manager's report. But when you stopped for a second, I thought you were finally going to give me the key to the thermostat, but I'll tell you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
So next we have a report from the Affordable Housing Committee. Welcome.
Hello, folks. Ed Curley, Chair of the Affordable Housing Committee. I think you have my report in your packet.
Yes, we do.
And I assume you've read it, so I won't go through it step by step.
At least the highlights, though, for the folks at home.
I thought I'd step back just a little bit. I'll be starting my 9th year in the Affordable Housing Committee as of our next meeting. And a lot of changes happened in Falmouth during that time. When I first joined the committee, there were 2 or 3 vacancies on the committee at all times. Many times we could not get a quorum. Since that time, I think the residents of the town have recognized how important this issue is to the town. We've had no trouble filling our committee, even when you folks stole one of our committee members and put her on the select board. We had more applications to fill the positions that were available than we had positions. So this is, I think, a reflection of the town's awareness of the importance of the problem. Over the last years, we've funded a housing demand study. We've funded a housing production plan. Those are critical to get the data that we needed so that we understood what's going on in town and what we needed to do to meet state guidelines and so forth. So our job on the Falmouth Affordable Housing Committee is chiefly to advise you and to educate, to advise and educate and inform. Those are our roles, and I think we've done a pretty good job of that. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we had our first housing summit. We had, it was called the Face of Affordable Housing in Falmouth, and we had several residents of some of our affordable units that the Housing Corp and the Housing Authority run, make presentations. That was chaired by our housing coordinator. Another big step forward that the town has made during my time here on the committee, hiring of a housing coordinator. This past year, we had another housing summit focused on issues of housing and social justice. That was chaired by Anji. And Peter was one of the presenters. If you go back to the 1 year before, Eric Turkington was one of the presenters. This year, again, we had Alyssa Magnotta. So we've tapped into the expertise that's around us and used that to present to the town information about the face of affordable housing and social justice issues and so forth. That's our role, to educate and inform. Lately, we've been getting a little more involved in more concrete options. It's just so important, and you know, I appeared before you not too long ago, and all of you spoke in support of the notion that the town has to put some money in place to help support affordable housing in Falmouth. It can't just be the community preservation money, which is wonderful, and we appreciate every penny that we get from that. Just to give you an idea, if we were to ask the town of Falmouth to put up $1 million next year to support affordable housing, how far would that go? You just approved changing the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund guidelines to allow up to $100,000 per unit in support of new construction, rental or home ownership. Do the math. 100,000 into $1 million is 10 units. Okay, so $1 million sounds like a lot of money, but 10 units. Now, that doesn't say every unit that we're going to build is going to need $100,000 of support. Some are going to need, let's say, 50,000. That's still only 20 new units that money would support. So you're going to hear from us, I hope by the end of August, with suggestions on some articles that we hope you'll support for November town meeting to designate some funding other than CPA money to go into the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund. And I hope that you'll be receptive to those. I hope you'll support them. And that's where we're putting most of our energy in the last 6 or 8 months, is trying to figure out how best to get more money into the support of affordable housing and to get Falmouth in a fair way to contribute to their part. And I just have one other sort of related comment, and then I'll open up to any questions you may have. Back in April, when we found out that the Cape Cod Country Club was probably going to be sold and no longer be a golf club, and that a solar farm was possibly in play there, the Affordable Housing Committee raised the issue with the chair, Megan, at the time, of the select board, of how important it is that, as this develops, that affordable housing be in play. This is potentially going to be a very large donation of land to the town of Falmouth. And the response we got was, we got to wait until town meeting, and you got to wait and see if town meeting approves this changes and so forth. What they did, as you know. And we're just still waiting. We're hoping that we haven't missed the boat, but we haven't heard anything yet about next steps on working with AMP and maybe getting some of that land set aside for affordable housing. It's another way for the town to support without having to use dollars and cents. If the land is at no cost, basically, to an affordable housing developer, that's like getting $50,000 or $100,000 per unit. So I hope we're going to hear from you soon about some sort of negotiations or discussions that are going on or plans that are going on, so that we can make some use of that land to increase affordable housing in Falmouth. So I think that's it for my comments. And let me apologize in advance, because I am a little hard of hearing, so you may have to speak up for me to hear your questions if you have any.
Okay.
I have a couple. Firstly, Ed, thank you for some of the statistics that you put in here about how we could ever meet what the state wants us to do, that target number. you say in the first column that new affordable units are in planning, under construction, or ready for occupancy in nearly 20 locations. I would love to know where those locations are.
Sure.
I think that would be really important information to have. And I also was very pleased with the fact that your group looked at the challenges of affordable housing and social justice. That was really important to me as well. So thank you. But if you could get me those 20 locations, I would love to have that information.
Sure, I can do that, Nancy. I can also just direct you, if you wish, to the agendas for our monthly Affordable Housing Committee meetings on the town webpage, because every meeting until this last one we focused almost exclusively on funding options. But every meeting we list. Each of the 7 members of the committee is responsible for sort of monitoring and tracking 1, 2, or 3 of these projects that are in one stage of process.
Could I find them in one agenda, or do I have to go through all of your agendas?
It really is on most of the agendas. It tends to be our last agenda.
But they would list all of them on one agenda.
So it's like Brick Hill Place, and Spring Bars Road, and Rebecca Ann Lane, and Gifford Street Workforce Housing, and so forth. They're there on the agenda, but I'm also happy to send you an email.
That would be great. I would love to have them in one place. Thank you.
I would like to just comment that I think you're exactly on the right track with looking for the funding opportunities, and it's just the same thing with government every time. If you want something done, you have to fund it. So it's a simple way to tackle it. Yes, Sam.
I notice everybody keeps saying, meeting the state's guidelines. The truth of the matter is we're trying to meet our human need guidelines here in Falmouth. I mean, we have, help wanted signs all over town. We don't have people that live in town that can fill those positions because they can't make enough money here and live here. And so it's not meeting the state's guidelines. It's meeting the human need that we have here in Falmouth. I just want to mention that because I hear people say that all the time, but that's just a target that the state set. It doesn't represent the real need here in Falmouth.
But if we can't meet that target, which is a low bar, right, we're not even close to addressing the needs in Falmouth.
You're absolutely right.
So I'm totally with you. I'm just saying that he does have the statistic in here, and I thought that was important to have. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right, Sam. We are not meeting the human need, never mind not meeting even the state target, which is a low bar.
And when committee members went around to the various boards, including your board, the planning board, the EDIC, Chamber of Commerce, unanimous support for the idea of the funding options. Not like cherry picking, oh, that one's okay, but that one's not. It was, we've got to do this. The town, the CPC, I think you've heard them over the years, has said, town has to, contribute something. It can't just all come from the Community Preservation Act fund. So I think we have the volunteers, the town boards, the Chamber of Commerce supported it, the idea of this. So we just have to have the political will to get it done.
Right. Yes.
I have a question. I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to ask this question, but with the Cape Cod Country Club that Ed brought up and making sure the Affordable Housing Committee is in those discussions, when would be the appropriate time to have those discussions? Like, what would it be in the planning stages? Would it be before the sale happens? Would it be in the negotiations of when or how the town would get that land? I just have no concept of when would be appropriate.
Well, that's a great question. I think Peter can comment on that.
Happy to comment on that, and I'll just qualify my response by saying I'm not 100% confident in the exact steps, but I believe it will start with the planning board special permit. So what the town did is it approved a zoning change which will help to facilitate AMP getting a special permit for solar overlay for that property. They don't have that permit today, and the details of where the solar will go and what land remains undeveloped and when it might be available for affordable housing will begin to be determined through a special permit process with the planning board, not the select board. At present, the select board does not control that property. We don't own anything, we don't control it, we're not negotiating, the town manager and I are not negotiating with AMP as to what the solar is going to look like and what land might be available for affordable housing. again, that process is anticipated. AMP is moving forward, and AMP has made public their plans to turn some portion of land over to the town. So there is hope that that will come. But we're not there yet, and the appropriate, I guess it starts with, it's the, when is out of, I can't answer that for you. That's really more an AMP question. AMP Solar is the developer. But it's more, I can, sort of speak to the venue. It's going to be a planning board special permit process, I believe, is where that starts.
So I
We could-
guess,
I was going to say, we could speculate that if I were the developer, I would have a purchase and sale agreement that was contingent on that special permit being granted. That's probably going to come before the actual purchase. That's my guess. I don't know that. And then once the sale is completed, I believe AMP is going to turn to the town and look for a lease option where they want to give the property to the town. Apparently, this is their preferred business model. Give the entire 150, whatever it is, acres. No, it's 300 acres, I think. 150 to be developed and 150 that's not to be developed. I believe it's somewhere in that area. And then once we get through that stage, I would imagine this probably will be several months from now, maybe even a year. Then we'll have the options to decide whether or not, once the town, if we do take ownership, if it's in our best interest, once the town does that, then we can decide about, looking at different options, different parts of the parcel, and what might be good to do. So it's a ways off.
So my son and I can probably get a tea time there for the rest of the summer, it sounds like. It's not gonna...
I would guess so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And at the same time, town staff, and Mr. Johnson-Staub probably can speak to this, is constantly on the lookout for town properties that may be suitable for development into affordable housing. So there may be other lands that might come forward, right? Possibly?
Yeah.
Under review.
Right. It's, we've done several sort of initial reviews, and what takes the most time is bringing an individual property to fruition. Right now, our top priority is the Emerald House properties. So it's, it's as much a matter of staff time and dollars to do the feasibility and engineering and planning to pursue any one of those parcels. So we have one prime piece of real estate and several, sort of smaller ones for smaller projects that may have some potential.
Right.
But we know there aren't large tracts of town-owned land that are going to become available for.
That's true. I don't want to get your hopes too
meeting a
high,
big-
but.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I mean, this is a big one. I know you are making some progress on the Emerald House site. I mean, I think that's probably more closer to the top of the queue, right, in terms of
Exactly.
getting where we might be able to put some affordable housing there. So these are the steps that, that we have to make in order to get where we need to go.
But regardless of what land we find, we are still going to need money to supplement development, so.
And Mr. Chairman, a good example is you look at the gestation period for Little Pond Place. A long timeline, much longer than many of us anticipated, many others anticipated, well over a decade, but, incredible success story. So it's several works in progress, and it's moving in the positive direction, maintaining momentum, and a lot of good people working on it. So that's really a lesson in terms of how things are going and what lies ahead.
And given the fact that we've got this zoning that we're reconsidering here, hopefully in town meeting, if we can rezone some of these business areas to make them usable for affordable housing, that's another initiative that could be helpful. If we develop more rentals, which is really what we need, we may have to only invest 25 to 50% of the project and get, a lot more housing that's available. It won't all be affordable, but just even having more housing overall will be helpful to the market, because right now we just have such a shortage. As Eric Turkington so clearly pointed out at the housing summit with the governor there, he went online and found 10 rentals available in Falmouth, ranging in price from $1,750 to $11,500 per month for rent. 10 units, and that was the price range. And then he looked on the Airbnb site, and he found 300 units in Falmouth available. That's just on one site. and there's other sites, and there's private realtors, and there's private rentals for summer rentals.
And you
So-
can't blame the folks who are using Airbnb. I'm sure they're your friends. Maybe some of you. They're my friends. I know that. It's an option that's out there for them. But that means that we have to take some other steps in order to make sure that we have the diversity of housing and fill the human need that Sam was talking about.
Right. Thanks for your work. Certainly appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you very much.
I miss working with you.
Thanks.
Are there any questions about affordable housing from the general public before Mr. Curley retires?
I miss working so closely
Okay, thank you.
so often.
And now we have a report from the Recreation Committee.
I just want to come up and say hello. I have been recently reelected as chairman of the Recreation Committee, but I wanted to thank Bob for his many years of doing it, and because he has written up a very nice report that we worked on, I'm going to ask him to make the presentation tonight to you.
Sandy, you have to introduce yourself, even though most of us know you.
Sandra Cuny.
Is there anybody in this town that doesn't know Sandy?
No, probably not.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, I've been the chair for 3 years, 8 months, and I thought that was long enough. And let someone else take a shot at it. And our new chair, Sandy, and Michael Halen's our vice chair. And
don't forget
your name.
My name is Robert Brown, and I am the former chair of the Recreation Committee and a member of the Community Preservation Committee as their in their recreation seat. This report was first drafted in February. It got postponed, and so I re-edited it for today. Some of the things I would have talked to you about in February have since been resolved, and new things have come up since February. So first, most of our meetings during COVID-19, if not all our meetings during COVID-19, was via Zoom, and it went very, very well. We reached a quorum each and every time, and I like doing the meetings via Zoom, and I wouldn't mind keep on doing it, but I think a hybrid maybe form of meetings would probably afford us to have a quorum 12 months out of the year, because some of our members go to Florida in February, March, and April. The recreation director who's here today, Joe, he updated us on the COVID-19, what was going on with the recreation department building and the programs, and he continues to update us regarding COVID-19 issues in regards to recreation in the town of Falmouth. As part of the recreation department, Joe has filed and has approved 5 community preservation applications from the Recreation Department are currently in progress, and that's Fuller Field, which is an infrastructure safety project that's going on right now. There's a Little League, Lower Trotting Park. The Little League Park is an engineering and master planning infrastructure safety studies going on right now, which is very much needed. And Nye Park is having tennis courts remodeled and refurbished and dug up and reinstalled, and it's been a mess for probably at least the 5 years I've been on the committee. It's been cracked, it's been tried to be fixed, and now it's going to be getting done soon. They have some issues regarding, I think, burial grounds possible, so that's getting explored, and then once that's finished up, they're going to be installing those courts. They're also going to be putting pickleball court lines, I think, also in the park, which is probably a subject at the end of my report. The Gus Canny Center is open, and it's doing well, and it has some building needs regarding the roof leaks, and the floor needs to be replaced. I believe the floor is funded, and they're waiting to fix the roof. And once that's done, there'll be a new floor. Some comments that many members have heard is that they'd like to see voting. People have spoken to them that they miss voting at the recreation center. They miss seeing the community table full of activities and brochures, and they miss seeing this guy, Joe, and Adam at the recreation department. They'd like to vote and come say hello. And so I don't know if that's going to proceed, but I think Precinct 2, which I live, I like going to see Joe at the rec center, see the table, see Adam and the other employees. So, in any event, so we do our yearly Fields and Park tour in June, and we hit 9 fields this year, and I mentioned them in my report. We also, what we wanted to talk to you about in February was getting a 3rd field at Sandwich Road at the George Gaspa Complex. And then the fire department site came up, so that community need seems to be more important than a recreation field. But if there was room, we certainly would like to have maybe a half a field or a 3rd field, either grass or artificial turf, out at the George Gaspa Complex behind the fire department, if one is built there. An artificial turf field is needed very much in Falmouth. If you go to Trotting Park, you'll see that the use that these fields get, you know, from lacrosse and from soccer, they need to rest, where an artificial turf field does not need to rest. So that's some of the things that the committee is going to be continue to work on, pursuant to the Athletic Master Plan report funded by the Community Preservation Committee of 2017. From that 2017 report, only 1 field has been built, and that was the artificial turf field at the high school, which is primarily used by the high school. What the Recreation Committee believes is that another field needs to be, another artificial turf field is needed somewhere where non-school sports can be played on, so the 3 fields at Trotting Park don't get dug up, used, abused, and overused each and every year.
But we did rebuild a field at Trotting Park since 2017.
You've rebuilt 3 fields at Trotting Park since, in the last few years. Quite a bit of money has gone into it. I was going to go into it later in my report, but I can tell you right now, in our field report, that we thought Field 1 was replaced in November 2020 and will rest for 2 years because of use.
Right.
Field number 2 was closed for rehab and maintenance after 1 year of use. And Field 3 looks fantastic. So, you know, these fields, you know, if we use all 3 fields every year, each and every year, it's going to be a dust bowl again very soon. And it seems like the only solution would be another artificial turf field somewhere in town where it can absorb some of the use and cut down on maintenance, which is another situation, you know, regarding, I heard earlier today in your meeting regarding hiring with the DPW. We feel that the DPW is doing everything they can. Peter's been fantastic. Jeremiah's been fantastic. Jeremiah, you know, comes to our meetings sometimes and updates, and the DPW has been met with us probably at least once or twice a year since I've been a chairman. And so we believe the DPW needs more help, and we're in support of that. In regards to the field report, things that stand out, at Governor Fuller Field, Sandy noticed that the track probably needs some work so people can walk around safely, and they need recycling containers. And she's very adamant, and she would probably tell you that she wants to see those football bleachers removed because they're unsightly and unsafe. The senior center, Fuller Field area in the back has 2 restrooms. And the restrooms don't have signs on it that are prominent where somebody were going to use in the fields or a Commodores game or a Falmouth High School practice or a Falmouth High School baseball game or a Babe Ruth baseball game or at any use at the Fuller Field that might have. There's not like a sign that would announce and could be seen by a spectator or a fan or even a player that there's restrooms at the senior center. So we'd like to see a sign so they can use those restrooms. They're outside in the back, and there's no need to enter the senior center. It's on the, if you're looking at the field, looking up from the field, it's on your right-hand side in the corner. Correct?
What do they have now for signage, Bob? I haven't seen it. It's just
I think it's just a sign on the door says restroom.
Yeah.
Door.
So this is one of the things that Patricia Morano, another member, and I thought would be a good idea. We went to Woods Hole, the Bell Tower Field. First thing I always notice when I go to these fields, it's zero handicapped accessibility. Zero. None. Can't get in. Doesn't meet any of the regulations that should be there. In any event,
That's part of the renovation that's coming in the Bell Tower Fields, is the handicap accessible path to the playground.
we hope. I believe in order to get through the community preservations, one of the things is that they have to have accessibility. We hope that that's going to help, but it's not going to help the playground.
Right.
The playground is not handicapped accessible. The playground, for some of us, believe is unsafe, and access for handicap to that playground is sand. And so, you certainly can't get in there on crutches safely, or braces, or there's not a chance in a wheelchair.
Right.
So these are the things that we'd like to see improved. The committee's going to put on the agenda soon to hear concerns of the Woods Hole Community Association regarding playground and the overall issues that they have with the park and what they'd like to see happen with the renovations in regards to the tennis court that's there. There's going to be pickleball lines put there too. They have concerns about the pickleball, and that project is probably should have been done 5-10 years ago. I know since I've been on the committee, the condition of that court, the fencing, it was truly a safety issue. We went to West Falmouth Playground and Swift Park. Looks great. Nye Park, I think we discussed it a little bit. It's going to have it's subject to community preservation. It has accessibility issues, which has been dealt with in the community preservation report, as to the renovations that are occurring there presently. So the accessibility issues will be covered in regards to going to the court area only. It doesn't apply to the whole Nye Park, which is pretty big. It's got well, some of you probably have been there. It's got baseball fields down low. It has playground, it has picnic tables, and so forth. In regards to the picnic tables and wooden benches, some of it needs work, and there's some safety issues. The wooden playground has zero. No, I'm looking at the wrong part. The wooden picnic benches are splintering, and the baseball wooden benches are splintering also. And my notes tell me it's not part of the community preservation project. Elliott Field on 151, the wooden benches are splintering and rotting. There's no bathrooms located on this field, and some of us on the committee believe that, maybe bathrooms similar to what's at the Little League. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the Little League baseball concession, and bathrooms might be something that might be suitable there someday. In regards to the Sandwich Road Gaspa Sports Complex, we were dismayed and sad to see the basketball court was trashed with water bottles all along the edges. One of the members picked them up. I think there were over 40 water bottles. We thought that it might be a good idea to have a pretty prominent sign, no littering. Sadly, we have to say that. There are barrels there for litter. There are barrels there for recycling. It just needs someone to, put it in. But it was pretty shameful. The baseball field was just renovated with town funds, and it needs some help. It needs some work, and I believe the DPW is working on that. I'd be remiss to mention, I know Sandy would get mad at me, the SBLI playground that used to be next to the recreation department, where it was removed for the senior center, is supposed to be installed there at George Gaspa Complex. If you look at the fields to the left, you see like a sand area. I believe it's going there, and I know that members of the committee would like to see that installed. We're not sure how that works with the fire department.
I don't think it's a problem with the fire department. I think it was just a problem with staffing this year, because they put all, as you can see in Mr. McConaty's report, they recently had to put construction projects on hold
because of, just attending to maintenance is, the crew is so shorthanded right now. And there was also a little bit of a holdup that I actually asked them to consider putting a couple of swings there, those handicapped swings, to supplement that. So there was a little bit of a thought of maybe adding that, so that held it up a little bit initially, and then I think that's the manpower issue now.
Also, the committee believes that, that maybe bathrooms, similar to what you see at Little League, and a concession would be nice out there, given that it has high use. It has use from lacrosse, has use from school sports, has use from football programs, has use from baseball tournaments, and we think that would be a good idea. And Upper Trotting Park was also on our list, where I talked about a little bit regarding the fields 1, 2, and 3. The handicapped accessibility to this field is atrocious. I think Chairman Brown's been with us on one of our field trips, and saw firsthand that slope that goes down into the field bowl, where if you're in a wheelchair, you're gonna have to hang on for your life to go down that hill, or have a lot of help. And then how you're gonna get up it. I understand from Joe, this is gonna be it's been budgeted for possibly 2025, and I know I've been whining about this for about 5 years. I think it's awful. I think that the whole handicap situation down there is awful. If someone wants to get to field 3, I think it's field 2 on the opposite. I mean, they can't get there because of they're going across grass. And when there's no restrooms there, once again, I think restrooms similar to what's at Little League should be there at least. Or until then, there should be at least some excavation work done for a place where someone could put a porta potty, like with a big X, so when the person who delivers that porta potty can deliver it to that place where it's not on a slope, okay, or not on rocks. So if it's on rocks and you're in a wheelchair, how are you going to get to that porta potty? You're just not. People probably don't come to these fields because there's not handicapped accessibility. Elders stay in their cars. They drop off their children. They can't go down there because it's not handicapped accessibility. I know me and and Mike Halen been whining about this for approximately 5 years when we first got on the committee, and I know others feel the same way, that this is critical, and I think this should be worked on. I think 2025 is too long a time to wait. Also, in regards to that field, we sent a letter a few months ago regarding security issues. This field, also gets trash and garbage dumped in the parking lot. People drive up there at night and they just dump, and then they go back down the hill. But the good news about Trotting Park is they've got a new skate park, and it's probably one of the most popular recreation sites in town. It is always full, it seems, every time I go up there. And I'd be very remiss, I put it in bold in my report. Every time we talk about this, Sandy always says it needs a grand opening. So maybe Mr. Chair and the town manager can work with Sandy for an official grand opening of this recreation department project, and with a lot of community fundraising and a lot of community help that went into that skate park. Being down at the baseball field at Little League, I see the people that are going up there. I see the kids coming down, and it's very popular. The children are well behaved, and it's good stuff. Central Park, Falmouth Heights, is a field that's in very, very good shape. It's well used, probably overused, but it seems to be very durable. And must be the ocean air. But once again, handicapped accessibility for bathrooms is zero. I've seen porta potties on that hill. I've seen porta potties fall down that hill. I've seen porta potties get blown over over there also. I recall, it must be over 20 years ago, when the Casino Wharf got redone, money was set aside in regards to septic projects, they had to adhere to, and I think the developers of that site 20 years ago gave money to the town for restrooms for Falmouth Heights.
Really?
And I think it's a long time coming, that restrooms for a very, very well-used field by youth, adults, and senior citizens, not to mention multiple races, from marathons and 5Ks and so forth. I think the time's coming for accessible restrooms down at Falmouth Heights, too.
That's an interesting note about the funding. I don't recall that. I remember that they did agree, some kind of concession because they put their septic discharge in that other lot behind the British Beer Company. But I don't remember.
They gave money for the restrooms.
Okay. We'll have to look that up.
We'll confirm that, Mr. Chairman. My memory is it was a very small increment compared to the
I think it
actual
was
cost.
$10,000.
Yeah, the actual cost we were encountering was going to be tenfold or more beyond what was allocated.
Okay.
And lastly, on our field tour was Medeiros Field, also known as School Administration Field. The lights don't work anymore, and they need to be replaced. So the last thing on my report is a subject that we were asked to have our fourth meeting on regarding the pickleball use at Lawrence School. The Lawrence School courts there is used for basketball, tennis, and pickleball. The Recreation Committee met with the neighbors on 3 occasions, and we met again with them last week. The town manager sent us an email on 4 subjects he wished that we explore, and we did. And we also added another subject, that we wanted to explore. Personally, I wanted to explore in regards to adherence to the playing of pickleball, tennis, or even basketball at the Lawrence courts, because there were signs posted that said from 9 to 7. And I personally witnessed that time that Joe set from 9 to 7 being violated. So we had a meeting with the neighbors, we had a meeting with pickleball players, and we had motions filed, we had discussions, and the committee voted 5-2 to keep the current hours of use of pickleball in play at Lawrence School, which also the same hours of play for basketball as well as tennis. Prior to the courts getting redone, you could play basketball and tennis. There was really no, I think it was dawn to dusk, there was really no issue. There was really no, there wasn't no issue because the courts were probably not playable for probably 10 years. But anyway, there was no issue with the neighbors regarding just tennis and basketball, from what I heard, for a long, long time, other than sometimes people shine their lights on to play basketball, headlights into the courts to play basketball at night. And in any event, we had a meeting. We voted on the limitations to the hours of play there, and the committee voted to leave that to the discretion of Joe, to the current schedule. And I think I was remiss in my email I sent to Ms. Davidson in regarding the schedule. I'm not sure if you have the schedule of play. If you don't, I brought copies with me.
We don't. Is there a way we can maybe lock that court at the, until the time to open? I know you don't really have people that can run around and do that, but I'm trying to think of a way to try to manage that hours, because there's no enforcement.
Well,
another question I have is, how, why is it?
Can you speak up? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm wondering, why is the pickleball so much more of a problem? Is it just the volume of players, or is the ball itself louder than the tennis ball? Or?
I think some of the comments that we heard at the committee is the sound of the ball repetitively over and over again. And there's 5 courts. At certain periods of the day, all 5 courts are being used. On other parts of the day, there's 1 court being used. There's 1 court that's open 7 days a week, and the other courts, and then there's regular pickleball days on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. The little pickleball court, that's only a 1 court, that's open every day.
And now we're thinking about, or we're planning to put pickleball courts out into Bell Tower Lane court. A lot of residences around there too. So we're probably just gonna have similar problems down there. And Nye Court also, it's pretty residential. It's not quite as tight as Lakeview, but we're heading, yeah. So once we get these other courts, are we gonna maybe reduce the hours over there? Or what do you think, what's our strategy going forward? Because
short-term, we were asked for a short-term solution and a long-term solution. There wasn't a short-term solution. The status quo was the short-term solution voted by the committee. I think the vote was 5-2. The long-term solution is that build new pickleball courts, somewhere where the noise won't bother people. For the Recreation Committee's part, we voted on a subcommittee would be formed with 3 members for open meeting law issues, and to explore long-term solutions for pickleball as well as for extra fields in town to counter the overuse of grass fields. So that's our long-term solution. Another solution was, I believe Joe can show you, is to put sound mitigation equipment on the fencing. There was talk of trees. There was talk of, I think he has a, this is what the sound mitigation, I guess, looks like.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could I just ask that we limit the conversation in the audience, only because I'm having trouble focusing on what Mr.
I'm having a
Brown is
hard time
saying.
hearing you also.
okay.
So if we could just limit that.
Just, thank you. So, what else is there? Oh, this is gonna be the fence, huh?
So the Recreation Committee listened to, I know Mr. Galasso's here, and he came to all 4 meetings. We listened to the neighbors. We listened to pickleball players the last meeting last week, and they came in a good number. And listened to the neighbors, and I was in the absolute minority in regards to the vote, so maybe Sandy should talk about the pickleball issues too. But I know when I was on the Recreation Committee, and I'm on the Community Preservation Committee, it was agendaed twice on the Recreation Committee, agendaed twice on the Community Preservation Committee. I never once heard any issues regarding noise. And when the Lawrence Courts came up as a community preservation project from the Recreation Department, first thing I thought was great. First thing I thought about was the school children. It's at Lawrence School. A basketball court's going to get fixed finally. I mean, it was horrendous condition. Tennis courts are going to get fixed there. They were in horrendous condition. And I said, that's great. This is a great project. And the pickleball, to me, I'm not a pickleball player. I don't really know much about pickleball other than the noise. It was an afterthought. And you know, I think, you know, I wish personally I had known about the noise in the first instance, but I didn't, and I apologize.
Right, but now we do, and we're building more, so we might want to kind of think about it a little bit more and try to mitigate, or maybe it's not such a good idea to put pickleball in these other courts. That's your cue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sandra Cuny. If you listen to the 35 pickleball players that came, that represent probably 350. All right, we had for many years people that want to play pickleball. Now, West Falmouth, courts came out beautiful. No complaints there. My first suggestion is that we get the soundproofing put on. And then we probably should do that for every court we build. The one in Hyde Park, I mean, money's already been appropriated for it, but it would probably be a good idea to include that when we build those. 350 people that enjoy playing outside. It's exercise for the town. So I look at the number of people that want to play. And the hours that the Lakeview people came back to, they wanted Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 4. Well, in the heat in the summertime, nobody is on that court from 12 to 4. They want to play in the morning and they want to play in the early evening. And we have made a concession by opening at 9 and closing at 7 or dusk. So in another couple of months, it's dark at 4 o'clock. I went by the other day at 3 o'clock. It was a hot day. Guess what? There was one person on that court playing basketball. So it's not that they're there from 9 to 7 all day, every day. And so I think if we just put the sound mitigation up and we start looking for building more courts so we can accompany those people. But this has been a recreational facility for as long as I can remember. And I think that by cutting the hours the way we have, pickleball people like to play at 7 o'clock at night, so there's a concession right there. They can't.
So would that,
Joe has already talked with the chief of police. There was one call made in, and they did not respond. So we've made sure that if anybody starts earlier or plays there later, the police have said that they will respond. So.
I got a question for you about that soundproofing. Will that go around all 4 sides? It's good.
You got to go up to the mic.
Oh.
Joe Lennox, Recreation Director. Yeah, it can go around all 4, but the idea is to put it around the sides that are affecting the neighbors.
Right.
It'll direct the sound
Because it's going to
the
be.
other way over towards the school.
Because it's going to block all the breeze. It's going to be.
Yeah, so we'll have to put some support poles up, you
Yeah.
know, on the outside of the fence, just for windy storms and heavy wind. I'm, still waiting to get a price on
Just
that.
thinking of the people on the court with the sides all blocked. It's going to be awful hot in there. So I'm just wondering how it works.
No, I think it'll be fine. Mashpee has it around 3/4 of their court.
Yeah.
They have 8 courts there. It's worked wonders for them.
Yeah.
But again, those houses are a little further away
Yeah.
than what we have at Lawrence. I think it's a good idea. It doesn't eliminate the sound.
Right.
I mean, they're very specific when they sell the product. But it could drop the sound from 10 to 12 decibels, which is roughly 50% of the noise is what they look for.
And at the bell tower courts, you'd only need it on 2 sides probably.
Probably, yeah.
And,
In West Falmouth, we put it up there with just the one side.
Yeah, and Nye Park, probably 2 sides would do it. Maybe only 1, actually.
Yeah, because we're trying to adjust the pickleball courts there from the original plan to, put soundproofing up to, in the best places and get them as far away from houses as we can.
Is that an expensive add-on?
It's pretty expensive, yeah. They have 2 colors. They have pickleball green and black, and the black is roughly $40 a sheet less, and it's $430 or something, a 8x6 sheet.
So will it
So it's
need to
roughly
be,
$23,000 to do half the Lawrence School Court
think
without the support poles.
do you think there's enough contingency in the budget to be able to add that to the project?
I've applied for our capital funds for November for
Good.
that. And I've also started exploring Goodwill Park, because there's a open field there that we could probably put hopefully 6 to maybe 10 courts. I've checked with Frank Duffy on the deed. We're all set with the deed. Peter McConaughey has said they would help with preparation for the courts, and I'm just waiting on a price from Cape and Islands Tennis as far as what the cost might come close to.
Okay, thank you.
So, yep.
Any other questions for Recreation Committee? Any comments on how we might address any of these concerns? I know the bathrooms are expensive, but do you have any ideas about implementing any of these, or should we take one advisement for now and come back?
Well, we've gotten proposals coming into the capital budget, so that's part of the process that all of these that are significant costs will be coming forward and with discussions with the board in weeks to come.
Okay, very good.
I have a question.
Yes.
In the report, we kind of listed out some of the things we thought were safety issues, like the splintered woods. Do you need a separate letter written to you like we've done in the past, or will this report suffice for you to address some of those safety issues.
Certainly the report suffices, but anything you want to emphasize would be welcome.
Okay, like a
Email
separate
or-
letter to the board and CCU and maybe the
something along.
DPW so everybody
Some
knows
of the
which
quick,
ones.
urgent ones that you need
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, right, just the safety ones.
Right,
Like
okay,
splintering wood is, to me,
right.
kids are playing. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you to the committee for that report, appreciate that. Next is a discussion of future alternate dates for public meeting on a proposed Joint Base Cape Cod machine gun range. And so what I hoped we would do is just look at our schedules and discuss possible options for dates, because I would like to entertain a meeting with Joint Base Cape Cod staff that we've been hoping for a while. I'd like to give them as many dates as we can come up with. Of course, it'll have to be at least a week away from now to give them fair notice.
Yeah, I think you want to have a couple weeks anyway, because we probably have a fair amount of advertising and outreach we'd like to do.
Mhm.
I think, is there a timeline for this project?
Well, the Environmental Management Council, the best information we have is that they're moving their meeting to the fall, but they won't give a date. They were going to be meeting, we're told, this month, but that's been delayed, and all that it indicates on their website, as soon as they have a date, they'll put it up there, so they're being fairly guarded on when that's going to occur, but that did say the fall.
I'm just concerned, I don't want to miss any dates or do anything like that, but I would like to put this off potentially till October. And I want to make sure that that's not too late or that they can't move forward.
I think that would be
That
risky
public
because
hearing.
last I heard, they were supposed to make up, the committee was hoping to reconvene in September at some time. Have you heard anything about it?
Only the fall is all I've heard. I haven't heard any specific date, but you do have some opportunities after Labor Day if you want to be looking at those as well.
Why would you want to put it off?
First of all, I don't want to miss a public hearing with them.
Right.
And September is a crazy month. My second comment is, we have been trying to get a public hearing date for a long time.
Since April.
And I'd like to know what the resistance is, or why they're not presenting to our community what our community has been clamoring to hear. And also allowing groups in our community who have very strong opinions. I mean, I think it needs to be balanced, and I think we need to hear. I just don't understand what the issue is. And I have read all your emails. It's not from lack of trying. Please don't take it that way. It just seems as though every time you put out dates, or there's a delay in a response, and then it can't happen. And this is too important.
What I found really troubling was the fact that they wanted to come to this meeting tonight to give us another annual report. And so they're available for that, but not available for this. So I declined their request to attend tonight to tell us about their annual report. And I said, I'd really like to make a date for the machine gun range discussion prior to that. And I'm hoping it can happen soon.
And I appreciated your sort of not allowing them to come forward to give us their annual report, because we have had such a hard time getting them here for a public hearing. So to me, I had the same line of thinking. If they can get here to do that, why can't we get a public hearing?
Right. It's concerning.
Where we've left it with them is that if it's the desire of the board, we'd set multiple potential dates, and I would notify them and ask them to make themselves available. But as you've noted, Madam Vice Chair and Mr. Chairman, we've done that in the past and come up empty, so it is equally frustrating on my part, I assure you.
Ask a question. Where are we with our state legislative delegation in voicing our concerns? I was wondering whether we should just hold a public meeting and have our state representatives come to that and take the input, because I think if it's a change is going to occur, it's likely to become as a result of state action. and maybe they'll show up.
Well, that's what happened last time, right? We had, we were gonna go ahead and have our discussion 2 weeks ago, or was it 2 weeks or even longer? And we did have one representative, Colonel Porter, showed up and said, you know, we really want to do this, and let's set a date in July. And then that was also not able to be accommodated once we did.
And as I recall, he was in no way, shape, or form prepared to speak to this issue.
Correct.
Am I wrong about that?
No,
Right,
because
so we
it's not a
had-
one-person presentation. They need other,
Agreed, so I guess I was unclear about, was he here just to listen to what, I mean, I just
don't know.
wasn't
I
sure.
feel- We can
I
only
felt like he
speculate
was
as to what the reason,
surprised.
but
I felt like he was surprised.
what the effective result of it was postponed us from having our discussion
Right.
and gave us hope that we would have this other meeting, and that hasn't happened either. So now,
In some ways, I'm inclined to set, I agree with Sam that I'm inclined to set a date, and let, you know, whoever shows up, show up, and let our community speak to what its concerns are in front of our state delegation. I think that's a really good idea.
okay,
And if they would like to come and present their side, so be it. But we just keep waiting because we are being respectful and we're trying to get them here. And I just don't see that happening on the other side.
and conversely, Mashpee has decided not to wait, and they went ahead and issued their letter of opposition because they didn't get any response, and they grew tired of waiting.
And that's another option.
Right. It's unfortunate because it's not clear that we would all be completely opposed to what they're proposing, but we don't have a chance to really consider it carefully.
We can't make an informed decision if we don't have the information.
Right.
So if we have information from other groups,
Okay, well, what's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to go up with Sam's suggestion
I
to
like
just
Sam's
set a date
suggestion.
and invite?
I've already sent our state representatives a letter
Mhm.
stating my opinion and rationale behind it, because my concern is that many times these military installations, you know, have a very short-term mission kind of objective. And they don't want to hear about anything else outside of that. But this could have a long-range impact to the community, as we know has already happened historically.
Right.
And so I felt like it really was up to our state legislators to intervene and represent us as the citizens that live in this community. And that was our best hope of doing it. So I said, it was a personal letter. I didn't speak for the board by any means.
Mhm.
But, you know, I still think that's probably where we're gonna get the best response.
so I agree. I think we should set our date and we should advertise it, put it out there, reach out to JBCC and let it fall where it may.
I would have to say we don't want to put anything off to October, because I don't want to miss the date.
Right.
And,
Well, and that's why I asked if
The
there
Environmental
was.
Management Commission isn't going to hold up their plans to wait
For
in
us.
case we might have a comment.
Right. Okay, so if we look at September, can we not do a Monday night? Could
Is
we
August
do-
not good?
But I would suggest we also kind of check in with our state reps
Mhm.
and find out if there's a time period when they know they're not gonna have competing meetings.
How about this? Do you want to consider first offering a couple of options to invite Joint Base Cape Cod during the early part of August, and at the same time, reach out to our state representatives for something at the end of August? Or do you want to just go straight to your,
I don't know that we should go in August. I don't know.
Well, I don't know when the decisions are gonna get made.
And
so
that's,
that it's a fait
exactly.
accompli.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I think moving a little bit earlier probably makes the most sense strategically.
I
Fair
agree.
enough. I just would hate, I would hate to miss it
and
because
we're
I
going to
think
miss a
it's
chance
too
also to
important.
use the high school if we don't do it in August. Right? When's-
Unless you do a weekend.
Yeah, or if it's an evening,
Saturday.
we could probably
Mhm.
get an evening out of the high school. And I think we set the date, and I'm concerned about going back and forth and having them talk, giving them a couple of dates. We've done that.
Yeah.
And they don't respond. I think we should be done with that. I think we as a town need to move forward. We set the date, we tell them what the date is. They need to let us know a week ahead of time if they're gonna be there. And if they're not, I still think we need to give the people of Falmouth an opportunity to speak.
Yep.
They've done a lot of research, they have a ton of information. And if we wait to go back and forth, it just is, it seems to be, fruitless, and it's frustrating.
Just dragging out.
Mhm.
You have a preference for a day, Saturday? Do you want to go for Saturday, maybe a Thursday night, or?
Well, the summer period is a busy period for people. I think an evening meeting during the week makes the most sense.
Okay. How do y'all feel about a Thursday?
Are we doing August or September?
I was hoping to
You
start
still
with
thinking
August,
August?
just because the sooner the better.
A Thursday night?
I gotta turn my Wi-Fi off because I can't do anything with all these pop-ups.
You can't access anything.
Right.
Should be his calendar in your packet.
Yeah, I have that, yeah. I'm checking my own calendar for.
Well, why don't we check with our delegation, our reps and senators, and find out which of the Thursdays work for them.
I have all
Okay.
Thursdays in August available.
Same.
I do not, but.
I do not.
Pick the ones that are bad for you.
Well, I have my students coming to town. They're only gonna be here for a week. They arrive on the 5th and they leave on the 14th. So those 2 Thursdays.
Okay. So the
we saw
19th
and the 25th.
or 26th?
The 19th and the,
Oh, I'm sorry, 19th and the 26th.
Okay. Would those be
yeah, I
okay for
couldn't
you?
miss an event on the 19th.
I think I could do the 26th.
I would prefer the 26th.
Okay.
Okay.
See if it works.
And we'll see if that works, but the only people that I think we need to be debating with is our state legislators, not JBCC.
I agree.
But we'll still invite them.
Well, absolutely.
Okay.
And they need to let us know a week before,
Yep.
because if we're setting up the program, we need to do the time outlines and, it's our meeting.
Right.
If you select a date, I'll notify them immediately and ask that,
August 26th at the high school.
7 PM?
I think 7 PM, yeah. Does that sound right to everybody, 7 PM? Or do you want to go a little earlier?
I'd like it earlier. 6 o'clock,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
PM?
We're going to go for
I
6.
just think it's gonna be long.
Yeah.
And I think we need to give
Okay.
a lot of time. And so the only people we're waiting to hear from is Dylan Fernandes, David Vieira, and Susan Moran.
Right.
Right, I'm assuming you want to go with this date, even if, say, one of the legislators can't make it. I mean, it's.
Well, if they all can't,
Month
then we'll
out.
reconsider. But,
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's probably optimistic. I think you get them all.
Could we,
right.
could we add September 2nd as a alternative date to our legislators?
yes.
This is the next-
September 2nd. I don't know that I can do that one, but that's okay.
What, are you trying to enjoy your summer?
Well,
We can go with the 26th as primary. Just as a reminder, as the board is aware, this Thursday, the 29th, is the date you attempted to meet. And unfortunately, the National Guard, just for those listening, the National Guard indicated that they could not commit until just a matter of a week or a little bit less before that event, which
Right.
obviously gives us no time to notify the public for a proper public meeting. So
Yeah.
that's why we're not meeting this Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it's the board's desire, we're happy to go with the 26th and get the word out and notify our legislators as well.
Okay, well, let's, primary will be the 26th, and alternate will be September 2nd.
Want to vote on that, Mr. Chair? Do you want to just?
Yeah,
by
if you'd like,
consensus?
if you'd like us
That's
to
fine with
vote,
me, too.
yes, all those in favor of setting the joint base Cape Cod discussion for
Machine gun
August,
range.
machine gun range discussion for August 26th, 6 PM at the high school,
With the backup of September 2nd.
with the backup date of September 2nd, same venue,
Second.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. And then I'm understanding the only thing that would move you to the backup is if the legislators could not attend.
Correct.
So we'll offer the opportunity for representatives of JBCC to make a presentation and attend, notifying us well in advance. But should they not be able to, as has happened in the past, we go forward in any case.
Correct.
So the first choice for venue is the high school auditorium?
I would
Yes.
think so, unless
And
you
the second
feel.
choice might be Lawrence? If it's-
Lawrence is not air-conditioned, so that time of year could be
Oh, that's good.
very uncomfortable. So I think
Mhm.
the high school's been very accommodating for us, so I'll check with them right away.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just, you're into the beginning of the school year, and so they're bound to have some orientation programs and that sort of thing, so
May.
I would jump on it pretty quickly.
Okay.
Will do. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now we're ready to have a discussion of establishment of an advisory committee for restoration of the old burying ground. And where are we on that?
I think you had Falmouth Net Working Group next, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
excuse me. Oh, yes. Review draft select board mission statement for Falmouth Networking Group. I just want to make note, we have this packet, we have note from the Falmouth Democratic Town Committee resolution opposing joint base Cape Cod machine gun range. That was here, I imagine that's here because they thought we were gonna
Right, that was included as a
actually
courtesy.
discuss
Mr.
the
Chairman.
content. Okay.
Came in, and Diane included it in your packet as a courtesy.
Okay, the groups keep piling up in opposition.
On the draft working group statement, you had two documents. One is the one that received initially from Representative of Falmouth Net, Mr. Gaylord, and we also provided a staff alternative, which essentially embraces what was included, but has comments from town council and other staff members in our recommendation, which is the second one-page document you received.
And what, can you highlight the differences here? What did we add?
Well, a couple of questions in terms of the purpose and mission. The last couple bullet points in particular, community-based internet project asking for locations where this has successfully occurred. That had been requested of the consultant and had very limited response on that. Also, the first bullet point, town council brought up about whether special legislation would be necessary, and town council would be assisting us in that exploration. Also, a question as to whether the EDIC consultant would be available and whether any funding is in place to assist if that working group would have any questions of the consultant. Don't know the answer to that, but it could be explored. And also some changes suggested in the membership where the finance director was removed. Jennifer has multiple assignments, including we're getting into the capital and budget process. She's also our primary point person on the cable TV negotiation, which is lengthy and complicated. So Jennifer would be available for us to consult as needed, but sticking with a select board member, a town manager, a designee, a public works director, a designee, and a member of Falmouth Net. I believe Mr. Gaylord was suggested as that
Yes.
representative. So essentially trying to narrow down, although a couple other questions were asked, also in terms of the explanation near the bottom of the page, given the short time frame and prior existing commitments, It'll, limited to presenting potential options for the town and highlighting areas needing more in-depth study. Because again, if this is to be focused between now and the November town meeting, there's fairly limited time available to really get effective information to the board, which is what I believe you desire. So really just some fine tuning of what was proposed, which we appreciate very much from Falmouth Net Inc.
Do you have something?
Yeah, I had one comment. On the third bullet point, it says town position on ownership and operation of the network. Could we say town options instead of, because the way this reads to me is that they're coming up with what the town position should be. So if we could say that to say town options on ownership and operation of the network.
Okay.
I like your change better than mine. I had put a town position on ownership and/or operation. I mean, there needs to be a little bit of flexibility, but I think yours is better. And I would also think about applying that same logic to the very first sentence of the purpose and mission statement. It says, of the town in creating and operating, something similar to what Angie just said.
Maybe the options that the town has in creating and operating a community broadband.
Yes. Thank you.
So options for the potential town role?
Again, the town role,
So it would be a range of options potentially?
yes. Do you agree with that,
Yeah, I
Angie?
think so.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
Can I also add on the first bullet point, the end says, and borrowing authorization or will special legislation be necessary? And maybe this is too much for the November town meeting, but it would be good to know if we find there's special legislation is necessary, what that legislation is. So if we find that we're gonna need to, okay, yeah, we're gonna need special legislation, it'd be good to know what are those legislative actions that we need and potential timelines for them.
Great. We would rely on town council to do exactly what you indicated.
Okay.
Well said.
So I'm wondering if we should just split, and if I'm splitting hairs, push back, but I'm wondering if we should say, can this project, blah, 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 powers and borrowing authorization, period. And then I think the next bullet should be about special legislation, the necessity of special legislation.
We'll investigate that separately, right?
Exactly, that's exactly what I mean.
Very good.
Those are my only
Good adjustment.
comments.
And on the third bullet point, town position on ownership and operation of the network versus collaborating with private operation.
Well, that got changed to town options.
Yeah,
Okay,
Angie changed that one, yeah, and I think that makes sense, but I think that's exactly where she's going.
okay. Okay, any more suggestions for changes? Do we want to vote this? Is there a motion to move this forward as amended?
Motion to move as amended?
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Now it's discussion of an establishment of advisory committee for restoration of the old burial ground. And
I have a question. Have we previously had an advisory committee that perhaps we lost quorum and lost interest, or? was this
no,
new?
this is a new initiative to pay attention to that burial ground that's been talked about before a few times, but there hasn't really been any substantive action.
And this would be all of, I know the emails that we've received are specifically about, I think they were all specifically about one burial ground. But would
Yes, and
cover
this
all
is
of
the
them?
one that's off Mill Road there, that, as soon as you get started on the left.
So I guess my question is, would this advisory committee work on all of the burial grounds on town land?
It may be eventually, but right now they're concerned mostly with this one most historic one that's been most neglected.
I believe this is the only one that has, actually, the town has maintenance responsibility
Okay.
for, is the old burying ground. And they just have been fundamentally handling the
He says
vegetation.
two. Judy, do you know specifically? Could you help us out?
And who authored the,
That's fine.
this, where did this come from?
Hi.
I bet it came from somebody
Who
Judy
wrote
knows.
this?
I,
Judy?
Hi.
Did you write this?
No.
No, it says Ed.
Dad.
It's here.
I was just curious.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I'm Judy
Ed had-
Fenwick.
had that.
I'm in a butter to the old burying ground.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul Dreyer, who has expressed great interest in seeing the town cemeteries looked after, alerted me to the development of what was going on. So I educated him a couple of months ago about the bylaw, Chapter 25, 25, Section 1. The title of the bylaw is Cemeteries. The Department of Public Works, with a footnote number 1, shall take over the care and maintenance of the following town cemeteries: the Old Town Cemetery, which is the old burying ground, and the free burying ground at the East End Cemetery. And then Section 2 is reconciliation of accounts. All budgets, balances, and funds received from perpetual care accounts shall be turned over to the Department of Public Works cemetery account for this purpose. But the footnote puts it back in your lap. The Board of Selectmen now perform the duties formerly performed by the Department of Public Works. So congratulations.
Thank you.
There's also a list that Paul Dreyer put together. I think Paul was the one who did it, on the list of Falmouth cemeteries. And the only two listed as town cemeteries are, again, the Old Burying Ground and East End Cemetery.
Okay.
And the East End Cemetery is what?
Hatchville and Sandwich Road. I don't know if it's attached to what was the East End Meeting House.
I know.
I bet it is, yeah.
I know where that is.
Okay. So, Mr. Haddad, would you like to speak to this at all?
Can I just clarify, is the question here, are we voting to create a committee?
Yes.
Okay,
Because Ed can't create a committee on his own.
right, okay.
Good evening, Ed Haddad. Hopefully you'll recall that I made a presentation on May 10th to the Select Board asking to put your attention to the restoration of the gravestones in the old burial ground, not necessarily the restoration of the burial grounds, but mainly the restoration of the gravestones. There's about 750 historic gravestones in that cemetery. Some go back to the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the War of 1812. Certainly, a lot of the founding names of the founding families of Falmouth. The cemetery, just to give you a little background that I told you at that time, this was the first site of the Congregational Church Meeting House, about early 1700s, if not 1700. The earliest gravestone that's found there is dated 1705 or 1704. So that would correspond with the first meeting house. The second meeting house of the Congregational Church was there, and in the third meeting house they moved up to the town green. I don't know in the history of the cemetery and the town when the actual ownership transferred from the Congregational Church to the town. I don't know when that happened or why that happened, but it is. So you own it. It's your cemetery. I don't think it's publicly used right now. I've seen there are some I'll call modern 20th century gravestones there, but not many. Most of them are 19th and 18th century gravestones. So at some point, it stopped being, it seemed like a public a burial ground. As I understood at that presentation, Megan made the statement that I guess the select board has to approve anyone that gets buried there. So I'm not sure how even that rule came into play. But the point is that the gravestones are in deplorable condition. It's really a travesty what's happened to them and allowed to keep continuing to go on. It's mowed, and that's it. That's the maintenance, is that the cemetery is mowed. I know somebody goes in and puts flags on the veterans' gravestones, but the gravestones aren't repaired, they're not cleaned. Many of them now are so worn that you can't even read the names off of them. And it's really something that should be attention to.
Could I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
So I've actually walked through that a couple of times, that graveyard, and it does have a lot of history. And at one point, wasn't it like the town square or something?
No.
Or there was something
The
in.
meeting house was there.
There was a meeting house, but I thought I read something else. But anyway, how do those stones get restored? Because I've seen the ones where you can barely read. How do you track that back and repair that?
I don't know. Just a little bit of history. I don't think Donna Wilcovey is here right now, but about 10 years ago, Donna did a lot of work on her own as a volunteer for free. She went in there and did a lot of the restoration work on her own at that time. There is an art to it. When I started this, I did look up, there are companies that do that, and it depends on the stone itself, because different types of stone, whether it's limestone or marble or granite, have different types of chemicals. It depends on what you're doing. You're cleaning the lichen off of them or what you're cleaning it. So there certainly is there's a craft to it. There's a science to it that people know how to do it. You just don't go in with a bottle of Listerine and spray it down. So certainly it would have to be done by professional people that know how to do that. I don't know if you could restore one that's so worn that you can't read the name anymore, to be honest with you. I don't know. Certainly there should
be replaced and try to match what's there, I imagine.
And I don't know that there's records. I think at the time I read that Donna had done some kind of a log of the gravestones there. I don't know where that is. That should be part of it. Mapping the gravestone, the names and where they're located, just for some historic purposes, just so people would know and families would know where they are. There's a lot of unmarked gravestones in there from the certainly the indigent that were buried there. They're just little white placards with nothing, just a little cross or something on them. So it's really a very spectacular place. If you haven't been there, you really should go there, because you've got Cider's Pond behind it. And it's just the most peaceful location. When you walk through those gates, it's just a very tranquil feeling when you walk into it, and you know you're walking into a special place. And I know the Historical Society does actually brings part of their tours. They bring people into the place, and it's just a treasure that it's really very underutilized, I believe, and I think the town could get a bigger benefit from having it restored and really be more public about it. A lot of people, I talk about it to people and they say, oh, I've heard about it, but I've never been there. Where is it? They don't even know about it.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know about it, to be honest with you. If it wasn't for Paul Dreyer, who brought me down there to see it the first time, and he brought it to my attention, I didn't even know where it was, to be honest with you. So it's a hidden treasure. And
You notice the one that says, "I told you I was sick"?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
It's funny when you go through the gates. There's two brick pillars and there's iron gates there, and there is a bronze plaque there, and it's called the Old Town Burying Ground, and it was put there by the town in 1930. So they recognized it at that point. There's the whole history of it on that plaque, and I don't know what happened after 1930. Nothing. No, it seems like, and I think it's about time that we put some attention to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things, if I might suggest, we hadn't had the opportunity to review this internally, including with town council.
Okay.
And if it would be the pleasure of the board, I'd like to be able to present these thoughts and suggestions to town council. Also, there was some reference to funds available, and those may be coming under the town's oversight. We want to be really cautious about that, and that's where we get into some legal issues as well. So if that would be agreeable with the board, can review this with town council and come back to you at an appropriate time for consideration of exactly how you'd like to proceed. I'm not looking to put it off, but I want to make certain that you're assembling it in a way that's going to be effective and productive And also, there are some legal issues here, I think, that town council needs to weigh in on.
And the legal issue is just the fact that this funding source has been identified? Or?
Well, the funding sources and also the legal responsibility. I think we need to be clear that we would be acting within the town's proper authority and not stepping on any toes as well.
If I may add on to that, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So one thing we want to take a look at is consistency with the town charter. Normally, appointed committees are not operational and administrative, they're advisory.
Right.
So we want to just make those things clear.
And how do you see this becoming other than advisory? From the language?
Yeah, I think it's just, you know, again, I don't think there's any dispute about the board seems to be clearly supportive of the notion that we want to get some volunteers to roll up their sleeves and move forward with restoring the graveyard. That's probably going to include securing some funds, and then those funds would be under the auspices of a town department to execute. So it's
I don't think the committee...
advisory versus administration. The sentence, you know, the mission of the Old Burying Grounds Advisory Committee is to develop and execute a plan to repair and restore.
But I don't think the intent is for the committee to do the restoration.
Good.
Rolling up their sleeves.
Yeah.
I think it's to
No, I think it's-
research, find out about
Yep.
who might be available to do restoration like that, and then advise us if we want to spend the money on fixing it, isn't that?
I don't think it's, I'm not suggesting it's wildly off. I just want to, you know, have a chance to review it with town council, make sure it's in proper form.
The Community Preservation Committee has already funded projects to restore gravestones in other locations within the town. You've
Right.
got a model for how to move forward on this, and I would assume that's one of the categories on the Community Preservation Act. That could be a source of funds for this project. So
Right.
I would see kind of the mission of this committee to really put together an application for the CPC to actually fund it and come up with a scope of action, which they probably can borrow from a previous application.
Right.
But I agree where it says that the Grounds Advisory Committee is to develop and execute. So that speaks to, they're gonna develop the plan and then they're gonna execute the plan. So I agree with you that the language needs to be tweaked a little bit, but I also agree it's not that far off.
Okay, well, certainly if you feel it needs review by town council, then I won't say no, but...
Won't take long.
Okay.
I might mention that these previous projects under the CPC, they basically monitored it. And, of course, they had a description of the scope of work, but they were responsible for making sure that it was done according to the contract, right?
Right.
And so you're looking for a department, it may be that this just simply falls under the administration of the Community Preservation Committee. Of course, we lack staff in that area right now, but anyway, that's another option.
But I thought that the charter said that it is the board's jurisdiction. So do we have jurisdiction to then pass it off to the CPC?
Well, that's.
Well,
what
it's
we have
not,
to do.
we wouldn't be passing it off, because the committee will come and advise us what they're planning to do, and we'll say, okay, good idea.
See, okay.
Then they go forward with the CPC if we sanction it. All right, so we'll see you again soon. Yes? Please.
I have some data.
Okay.
Judy Fenwick again. I got, it was Mr. Haddad, you prepared the memo. There's a list of 17 charges, and I can't help myself when I know information. Ann Sears is also here. She was the former director of the Falmouth Historical Society.
Right.
And Ann and I worked together probably 25 years ago when she had developed this wonderful notebook of documenting each of the then legible tombstones in the graveyard, and I turned it into a database.
Good.
The database is lost.
Bad.
But the notebook is not. We think Donna Walkovey has it.
Okay.
But, so I just wanted to refer to a couple of these things so you could take it into consideration when you start to formulate the charge. There's number 4 is to create a catalog of historic gravestones, names, and dates. That's already done. You can find it on Cape Cod well, I've got the website somewhere. I've got the 200 or so that are from up to 1769. The first one was 1705. So we've got the name that was on the stone and the date they died and their age, but location is another case, and that's coming along a little further. So that catalog kind of is there. A site map of historic gravestones. There's a map going back to 1902 that we think the Falmouth Historical Society has, but Donna Walkovi also has a copy. And then there was another map, maybe 1950s, 1970s, Colonel Brown had developed, showing locations. Again, this is something with more modern technology you could pull together. And so the bones of that are already there. Identify available space for additional new burials. That there's not much space left. Document the criteria for requesting burial there. My mom passed away in 2007, and at the time she was what was considered a ward of the state. So I was told by then two select women, Catherine Bumpus and Mary Pat Flynn, I wanted to find out how I could bury her in the old burying ground, because my mom had taught school here in the 1930s and loved Falmouth. And they said I would have to work with town council and establish the fact that she was indigent, because the only people being buried now in the 20th century were people who didn't have the money to afford a plot. So, I mean, that's, and again, that might be word of mouth, but I figured that the words were coming from people who were knowledgeable. And document veterans' grave sites and current flag placing practice. There's constantly, I don't want to call it vandalism, but somebody's always going in and snapping the flags in the graveyard. And the metal markers that designate whether they were Revolutionary War. There's a Robert Grew, again, if I'm going on too long, I'm sorry, who was part of the Tattakit tribe, and he fought in, I think, the Civil War. His metal marker's been crushed, and I talked to the fellows mowing the other day, and they said, we thought we'd run into it with a mower, but we realized it wasn't us. So we don't know who's going in and messing with markers. So access to that area would also be really important. Anyway, I think a lot of these 17 could be boiled down into broader areas, and then make note of what's already been accomplished there and what needs to be done. So I'm
Okay.
sorry if I've
So I
talked too
think the
long.
committee could do that. I think right now the town manager's concern is more just the legal responsibilities and the aspects of the formation of the committee.
Yeah, and it's not the charter, it's a bylaw that I read to you.
Okay? Thank you. Any more comments on the burial ground for now? Okay. Oops, I shouldn't have asked.
Way over our time.
Thank you for bringing out these points, but obviously what this proposal was a recommendation of what a committee might do. So this is something that obviously, like you said, Doug, the committee will decide what their
What's
focus
needed?
would be, and then when the select board sets it up, what their focus is gonna be. But these were just ideas and ideas that, for you to consider in
Okay.
the setting up of it.
Very good.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Vote, next, so if we're done with that, then the next is a vote committee appointment, Veterans Council Committee member, William Doherty, representing AMVETS.
For a term ending June 30th of 2022.
Is that a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you to Mr. Doherty. And next, we have announced November 2021 town meeting schedule.
Okay, you have that in your packet, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Yes, sir, I do.
Yes,
And
we need-
Based on our normal sequence of dates.
yeah, and the proposed date of announcement is tonight, Monday, July 26th. And the proposed idea for closing the warrant would be Friday, September 3rd, a little later than average, that's good. Selectmen vote articles and execute the warrant Monday, September 13th. Public Publish articles only Friday, September 17th, 2021. Petition article presentations Monday, September 27th, 2021. And selectmen vote article recommendations on Monday, October 4th, 2021. Publish the warrant with recommendations Friday, October 29th. And town meeting would be Monday, November 15th, 2021. Is that enough time to publish the warrant and have it in our hands prior to town meeting? It seems a little tight. 29th to the 15th?
That's based on our experience, yeah, working with a printer.
Okay.
I
think
move
we'll be
that we
okay with it.
approve this proposed schedule.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you for putting it together.
Now, review and vote minutes. I gotta say, before we start, we really need to work on getting the minutes done sooner, if possible. I was reviewing the Open Meeting Law Act the other day, and it says really, ideally, the minutes from the previous meeting should be voted at the next meeting. That should be the standard procedure. And if they fall off, bless you, if they fall off a little bit, you know, we can catch up, but it even says best practice is to get it done right away, and once you fall behind, it becomes chronic. And I will say that lately it's been a lot better, but we're starting to backslide a little bit, and I hope we can get it, you know, work with our minutes person and ask to go a little bit sooner, actually a lot sooner, because we're talking about April 5th here, and it's later July right now, so. Anyway, yes, sir.
All right, well, I would like to move that we approve the meeting minutes of Monday, April 5th, 2021, and release for public access.
I have, okay, yeah, that's the 5th. There was no corrections on the 5th. On May 10th, I had a couple.
Yeah, I know. Let's wait till we get to that.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion to move April 5th and release. All in favor? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
You weren't there. Okay. Now, April 26th,
I move that
2021.
we approve and release for public access the meeting minutes of Monday, April 26th, 2021.
Can I make one change?
Okay.
I believe it's April 26th. If you look on page 9, it says Mary Bunker Ryder. It's
Oh, yeah.
Mary Bunker Ryther,
Yes.
And then
R-Y-T-H-E.
R-Y-T-H-E-R, and if we could just make that change, I would,
Sure. So I'll approve the minutes as edited.
second.
And
All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Abstain.
One abstain. Thank you. And now we have May 10th, 2021.
Okay, I have edits on pages 3. If you look just past this middle of the page in bold, it says, Ms. Taylor, motion approval, second Mr. Patterson. Then it goes on to say, Mr. Jones, motion approval, second Mr. Patterson. I don't know who moved the motion, or who made the motion, but one of them should be dropped. Nancy, you want to take credit for it?
No, I don't mind giving it to Doug. I don't,
Okay, so it's
Oh, let me
Doug.
catch up. I just got
I'm
the
not-
page. Where are you, Sam? What number?
Page 3, just past the
G.
halfway, page 3.
Ms. Taylor, motion approval.
And
Okay.
then next sentence, it says Mr. Jones, motion approval.
Well, that would be a second, I guess. Oh, second, Mr. Patterson.
I don't remember who made the motion.
I don't either.
So let's blame it on Doug. So just say, take out the first sentence there
Yeah.
and leave it at Mr. Jones, motion approval, second Mr. Patterson.
Mr. Patterson, yep.
Okay.
That makes sense?
I'm fine with that.
And I had one on page 2, number 7, that it's not, there was a misspelling of amp energy. Let's see, oh, was that on the 10th? I think that was a previous minute. I think I made a mistake on that. I circled the wrong week. No, that's a minor thing, I don't care about
Yeah.
that. And there's another one where they misspelled Carrie Murphy's, page 5, number 4. Golf advisory report.
Should
Started
be
off,
C-A-R-E-Y, is that right?
correct, yes.
Yes.
we could go back to the page 4, just back up a bit.
Yep.
We have the special events, and we have the beach wedding, B under special events.
Mhm.
We've got A being a beach wedding with Griffin and Corral, and then we have B being Griffin and McGarrigle. 2 different locations,
Two
but I'm
different
not sure the name
dates.
is correct.
Hmm.
Is there 2 separate Griffins?
2 different Griffins?
I don't know.
We'll get a correction on that.
We'll check.
Yeah, if you could just check and put the appropriate name in there if it's wrong. That's everything I saw. So with that, I would be happy to approve it, this minutes of.
There was one other one,
Okay.
on page 2, Chair English Braga noted that, let's see, page 2. The mistake was that she identified Chair English Braga. I think I was chair then, was I? Or she
No, not
identified
literally.
2 people as chair, I think. I'm not sure if that's,
May 10th would have been before the election, right?
okay, yeah, so
Right.
maybe, okay.
So it's Megan.
That's right then, excuse me.
Oh, with that,
Okay.
I move that we approve the minutes of Monday, May the 10th, 2021, as edited and released for public access.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Abstain. Do I need to say that? Do I need to actually say abstain?
It's good to remind us.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
That's a good idea.
Sometimes they use the recording to do the minutes,
Oh, okay.
so they need to be able to hear that. Okay, and then the next minutes are executive session of June the 7th,
I didn't have any
and-
edits on that one.
and I found them to be correct. But I don't,
Does that ever get released? I mean, it's a personnel matter?
My only question was his name is in there. Is that appropriate?
For executive session,
And then put in the notes and then put out?
Yeah, because how do you
Released?
ever release if you,
yeah.
I
That's a
just
good question.
wonder if that's,
I
I'll
think
check
that should be
I'll check
amended.
that with-
yeah, that was my only question on that.
Okay.
So we
So
won't
can we
vote that
hold
one
those?
today.
We'll hold that.
Can I make one other suggestion on
Yes.
the July 12th? When it lists all the select board members present, they put a hyphen in Megan's last name.
Oh,
That should
true.
not be there.
Okay.
we don't worry about that minutia. As long as it's readable and
Oh,
understandable.
I
No,
do.
we
I
should
feel
get-
like her
we
name
should
is
get the
spelled
select
wrong.
board members' names right.
Okay, well, no.
All right, well, if we're going there,
Uh-oh, here we go.
could they just drop the Ms.? I'm not a Ms. If she could just, that would be great.
Okay.
Just put Nancy Taylor.
Okay.
You can put Dr. Taylor.
You could put Dr. Taylor, sure.
Are you a doctor?
I am.
You have a PhD?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We'll go with doctor, that sounds good.
Okay.
I think we should go with Dr. Nancy.
I agree.
I don't care about that, but I just hate Ms. I just don't see myself as a Ms. And I'm not Mrs. Taylor either, so you got nowhere to go.
I was gonna ask.
Don't bother, Peter.
Doctor's sounding good.
Doctor,
Don't
it
bother.
sounds like doctor it is.
Okay.
Okay.
And the last one is the executive session minutes of July 12th, 2021. And I think this one can be released for public access, but I did want to,
Which one, July 12th?
July
I
12th.
thought we
We're
were
gonna
Well, that's
hold
the one we're
that.
gonna hold
I had a
because
question about the name, Sam.
we don't know if it's accurate, appropriate to
I'm
put a
not-
person's name in a permanent
Okay,
record
so
like
then
that.
but I
release
was
it.
dealing with July 7th
Oh, I
originally,
thought you
because
said-
it was the, June 7th, excuse me,
Oh.
because it was the earlier minutes. And I did not think that one, my motion was to approve and not release for public access, because it has to do with ongoing negotiations. But I,
Well, actually, we didn't, that's not what we voted, so we might have to revisit that if we wanna,
Well, we said we were gonna hold June 7th.
well, that's July 12th.
that's your,
We're holding July 12th, I think.
Can we
yeah,
hold?
that's the
Oh, we're holding
confusion.
both.
Which one are we talking about here? Let's deal with June 7th first, all right?
Okay,
We're all on the same page, so to speak.
June 7th, we're still involved in negotiations, so you
Right,
want to...
yeah, no, I,
So we're
June
holding.
7th has to be held.
So
Let's,
if you want to
Approve it.
approve it, you can approve it and continue to hold.
well, that's,
did
that's
vote
my
to
motion, is
approve.
to approve and not release for public access.
second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we're looking now at July 12th.
And we're gonna hold. on
We're
that.
gonna hold and seek advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with that, the minutes are complete. Individual select board members' reports. Anybody want to report anything?
I would just, I feel like we need some kind of a staffing and financing plan for some of our more strategic objectives. I feel like we've got some major issues. You know, we just looked at the broadband issue. We're talking about the affordable housing issue. We're talking about, you know, coastal resiliency issues, and we're also talking about environmental remediation. We get lots of excellent data and presentations from some of the committees that focus on these different areas, but I don't see any way that the town staff is actually gonna be able to do the planning, the execution, and the final management of it. And I just feel that's missing from the management of it, and that's actually what ticked me off last time we got together, is that if we need to invest in staffing because you guys are overworked, and I keep hearing that from you.
Overworked? I don't recall ever using that term.
Well, you got a comment, well, overworked.
Well, the
You-
limits of
You're limited in what
capacity.
your capacity is, and,
Right.
and these are issues that aren't going away, and we can't just put our heads in the sand. I think we need to be looking at some kind of staffing projection and planning, and talk about the financial support of that effort as well. But, you know, these are major, major issues that we're looking at, you know, you may argue on any particular one of them. And we're not really making any progress in terms of what we're actually gonna do and when we're gonna do it. And that's gotta be some sort of town management kind of, you know, 5 or plus years or so, we looked at a community development, redevelopment director. I mean, we need to open that up again and take a look at how we're managing the town and its current and strategic needs that are coming up. And these are pretty darn important issues that need to be addressed. So I would just like to request that process begin. And it probably is going to affect the operating budget, and obviously town meeting is going to have to weigh in if we use past precedent. But I know that there was, I think, an interpretation by the Charter Review Committee that actually is a purview of the select board itself and not subject to town meeting approval. But at any rate, I feel like we're not doing justice to the citizens of this town if we don't begin to think about providing the staffing they're needing to start addressing these issues.
Okay, so you want to have a discussion about whether or not our level of staffing is appropriate for our goals and objectives currently before us?
Yeah, well,
And future consideration?
yeah. Well,
So are you, I just want to understand, are you asking that if we were to take on, if town meeting were to approve some of these projects, are you asking what the town manager's office would need in terms of staffing to be able to do these? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, and the CEO of any organization, I consider the town manager to be the CEO of our town, is responsible for providing the appropriate staffing to do the job, you know, to meet the objectives of the organization. And I feel like right now, we're kind of pinched. We can't really begin to seriously address the projects that would be required, which are gonna have to be developed even to present to town meeting for, you know, funding. I mean, we're not talking about approving the funding of any of these projects, but just simply, how are we gonna manage these projects? I mean, coastal resiliency, are we gonna just let the town come to a standstill because of, you know, a coastal storm?
Well, one suggestion is that we need a coastal person in the staff.
But initially, you've got to begin to think about how are you going to actually do these projects, planning them up in front, you know? what's the scope, the job description of such a person?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You need to have a roadmap as to how you're actually going to prosecute meeting that need. Yeah, we looked at affordable housing. Everybody agrees it's a critical issue.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a plan for
Well-
how we're going to be doing that. We've relied on CPA funding, but we don't have a plan for actually doing a serious job. I mean, people have come forward, you've done working groups and suggested various additional revenue sources. But in terms of actually looking at some kind of a plan to address this issue in an organized kind of a way, it's not there. It's all been done ad hoc and by various interest groups who keep raising the flag and say, guys, we've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But we need, I think, some sort of staff dedication. And it doesn't have to be one staff member for each of these issues. A broader approach would be, a community redevelopment, development type position, which we looked at. But now I think the need is even greater and it's a lot more obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Was that position supported by the board at the time?
Yes?
Yes,
Did it get
twice.
through town meeting?
No, it barely missed. But I thought the justification that was put forward was a little on the tentative and weak side. I think it can be pretty concrete now. And I think it's probably going to be a different hearing.
Mm-hmm.
It's-
Okay.
That was at least 5 or 6. And we had a report from the Collins group out of Northeastern University that we could go back and pull out, which was recommending that particular position. We've kind of taken a halfway step. I know Peter has really picked up a lot of those functions that would have been served by a community development director. And my hat's off to him. We've actually restructured the way we have our budget divided up, the operating budget, and including a community development section in it. So we've kind of tiptoed up to actually putting somebody in there who I see would be responsible for these major strategic need initiatives and trying to put together plans and approaches. How is it going to get done?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's really looking at how are we actually going to address these major issues for the town, these major needs for the town. So
Okay.
I just would like to see us do that.
So
And
you
that
want
was what was
to,
really
so you want to
frustrating.
revisit the idea of the community development director position?
No,
Really?
that doesn't have to be the first step. The first step really is to take a look at all of these needs and say, how are we going to staff, how we're going to address these issues?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to put that on as an agenda item since it's not on our agenda tonight?
Yes.
Well, that's what this is really asking for, is an agenda item to look at this. It's not trying to get into a discussion. I'm giving you the rationale for why I think we need to have an agenda item and
Okay.
start addressing this. So that those are the 4 issues that I came up with that I think sort of require this kind of an investigation or focus or thinking, are the environmental mitigation issues that we have, the coastal resiliency issues, the water quality management, the affordable housing committee. And then I think the community broadband issue falls into this category as well.
Okay.
So I have 4 that I'm understanding: coastal resiliency, broadband, affordable housing, and water quality management are the 4 you're asking to be.
Well, those are just the examples that come to mind, I think, and just highlighting the need for additional management-type staff.
I understand. I guess the one thing I want to be careful of, and we can carry that to the next discussion, is I recall a discussion with the board where at least one of the members said that 1 or 2 of these items were not even in their top 5. So one of the things that is critical to be able to move forward as an effective manager is a clear delineation of what your priorities are. Not that they keep shifting back and forth and up and down, and then we're questioned as to why we haven't addressed them. There needs to be a clear priority assigned by this board so that we're clear that we're moving in the direction that you as a consensus have outlined.
I wouldn't take those quick notes in this brief discussion as a directive.
That's right.
Well, I'm going back to the retreat.
Right.
We had some
Right.
comments about that at the retreat.
But
I
this is a
think that-
different idea.
But I think it's a very fair statement
Oh, yeah.
that the board needs to decide what our priorities are, push them over, as we do, to the town manager's office. Let the town manager do his mapping, because I agree with that, as to what he needs. But I also think that we do keep shifting, that well, I'm just saying that,
I don't think that we're shifting. I think that writing those couple of notes down about just a few things that Sam mentioned, those are not directives.
no, I agree. But I think that not everything can be a top priority, is what I'm saying. So that if, you have a list from 1 to 10, and we come up with our priorities, they go to town meeting, they get voted, and then they get pushed over. But not everything that everybody presents can be a priority.
Absolutely. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Sam's point is that at our last meeting, we talked about a couple of initiatives, like the Falmouth Net Working Group, and Mr. Suso mentioned that, board, please be careful, because if you're going to assign me new tasks, I may have to scale back on other tasks. And that prompted Mr. Patterson to say, at this meeting, maybe we need to consider our staffing levels and our capacity for projects. So that's what we're talking about. It's not what the priorities are, but whether or not we are getting to that limit of capacity for projects, and if so, should we be thinking about maybe getting some more help? I think.
But I disagree. I disagree with that, because we need to be very clear with his office about what our priorities are.
Yep.
And then he needs to take those priorities and decide what he needs to do to fulfill them.
I'm not arguing that.
Right, but I'm just feeling like, okay, I think affordable housing, top of the list, right?
Well, we're not on the agenda to
Okay,
prioritize
well-
right now, especially when Megan's not here, but all I'm saying is,
I'm just
I
trying to make
think
an
you're missing the
example.
point of Sam's request.
I don't think I am. I'm
Okay.
going to disagree with you.
Okay.
Because I think I hear what Sam's saying. But I think you meet in the middle of what are the priorities, what do you need to meet these priorities, and then you set up your maps. Am I wrong, Sam?
No, I mean, that's
Okay.
the process.
Exactly.
And it's not like you say, these are the projects, staff that. It's like, okay, here are the priorities. I mean, coastal resiliency might all of a sudden well up and become the most important. I mean, a plan is only a plan
Right.
when you set it up.
Right.
It's our projection as to how things are going. But these are going to shift around probably over time. And sometimes some of these initiatives may get stopped for permitting reasons or whatever. And you're going to have to shift over. But I think this person, such a community redevelopment person, is going to have their plate full. And it's going to be an ongoing process. But I agree with prioritizing which deserves the most attention up front, and then what comes next after that. But I'd like to see that kind of effort in terms of how the town manages meeting the needs that we've identified in the strategic plan. And I just feel like we don't have that staffing piece of it, and the financing that's going to have to go along with supporting the benefits, the salary and benefits of that person as well.
Right, you
Okay.
can't remove the financial
Yeah.
piece.
So but that's the job of, an executive officer of an organization, is to put that plan, package, and staffing and process together.
Okay. Do you feel like we came up with a pretty good organization of prioritization at our retreat, or do we need to revisit that?
Well, I think the four key areas that were brought up tonight, I think an expanded discussion of those would be most helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are certainly, have all been mentioned, but I think.
So maybe on
discussion
our
would be
next
good.
agenda, we should have a recap of our retreat and a prioritization of initiatives for this year.
I also think that you have to consider what is already in place and moving. Fire station, I mean, so I just don't want to be focused on one piece of it, because then you take away from all of the other things that we have pushed out onto staff.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point, is we don't want to put them in a position where they can't do what's already on their plate.
Right.
And that's where Sam, I think, was starting to lead with, do we have enough staff to manage all the things that we're throwing at them? Because we're getting a lot of ideas. We're getting a lot of new initiatives coming
And
at a
things will
fast pace.
shift because it's gonna depend on what town meeting goes for and what they don't.
Mhm.
So things will shift. I get that.
And we don't really have the same staff experience on board now. Steve Rafferty's left, and Ray Jack has left. You know, those guys could handle our water treatment facility project, right? And Ray Jack could handle the Little Pond Sewer Service area because he had previous experience. Are we properly staffed to manage these very large projects, you know? So I think that's got to be in the mix here as well.
Mhm.
So you know, that's not, Peter is outstanding. I mean, he is such a proactive person, but maybe he's not quite the right fit for the next sewer area, service area. You know, those are questions I'm basically asking myself. Sorry, but.
Yep, so we'll look
I
at.
was once one of those managers.
Yep,
That
so-
had to be thinking about how to get what the organization needed done.
Okay, so we'll revisit our strategic objectives from the retreat. Looking forward, we'll decide whether or not we have correct staff in place to meet the needs of the objectives that we've outlined, as well as ongoing projects. That sounds like a real good suggestion.
And with the qualifier that's within available resources.
Exactly.
Well,
And
I-
also, with a qualifier that if we identify that we might be at our limit, then we might be recommending that we might need some additional help.
Right.
That's
I
up to
think
you to,
Well, I'm not talking about not bringing, I'm just talking about living within our means.
yeah.
Absolutely, but
Unless you're talking about a permanent override.
if
Well, I don't
if
know.
that's necessary,
Well, we've had one in 30 years. I guess I just want to be a little cautious.
I'm not thinking of that, I'm thinking in terms of workload and whether or
Yeah,
not
we just,
the staff is available and in place to manage all the things that we're dreaming up.
if we have the resources, we can bring on the staff.
Right.
But one of my responsibilities as town
I don't-
manager is to live within the resources that you provided for me, so I just want to be a little cautious about that.
Right.
but if the needs of the town are such that you need more resources, we need to hear that. And then we need to go to town meeting, and then if necessary, to the voters. I mean, we already had that from our voters, basically saying, we need more public safety in terms of firefighters. And they voted it, you know,
For the first time in 30 years, yes.
Right.
yeah,
First
but we didn't
permanent.
ask that many times. We had a
Well,
we had a legitimate
That's not
need.
what I've heard.
We heard a groundswell of public opinion,
Yeah.
and we acted on it. We've got legitimate needs here, and if it can't be done with current staffing, I think we need to address that and not be kidding people and say, oh, forget it, you know, we've got a good 30 years before we, you know, face any significant flooding.
Well,
No
also,
one's saying that.
well, also, we got a pretty dynamic transportation committee that is advocating for, you know, moving forward with complete streets,
Yeah.
looking at pavement management, and a lot of programs that are gonna take time and effort and money. So we'll have to consider these and whether or not we can do it, so,
Well, this board needs to set those as a priority if they are. You are the roadway commissioners.
right.
You are the executing body on that, and they are advisory only.
Yeah.
So we just need to make certain of that.
But the advice that I'm hearing that they're sending is that if we want a policy like Complete Streets, we should at least fund it with $200,000 to show that there's a commitment to the program, you know?
Well, you have that in place,
Yeah,
and we are implementing that, so I
Okay.
think that's easy to miss.
the funding?
Absolutely. You have some
Okay.
dollars in place that are implementing complete streets as we speak
Okay.
through Public Works. And Peter McConerty is doing a yeoman's job on that, on managing funds. Some of it's Chapter 90, some of it's in other accounts. So
Mm-hmm.
Complete Streets, for instance, has been in play for a while now since this board adopted that as your policy,
Okay.
taking that seriously.
Also, I'm saying that the recommendations specifically is that we create a line item and call it Complete Streets in the budget so that it's identified as something that we're funding. That's where the
You
committee
can
is
say
going.
that about a number of items, and it's up, it's up to the
Certainly
board.
true. Certainly
Whatever
true.
your preference is.
Okay, well, that's just part of my selectmen's report on committee activities. Also attended the beach committee, and They are kind of struggling this year to meet their needs with, I know the DPW backs them up, and they're shorthanded, and they're feeling that ripple effect. So they had a number of concerns about going forward, you know, whether or not we're gonna be able to staff adequately to meet all those challenges, so,
As far as trash pickup, I know we're in good shape there.
okay.
But on the margins, there've been challenges, as Peter McConaty reported. You're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can only do so much with what you have.
Well, we see better opportunities ahead.
Right.
We're going to stay the course, and I think some of these things will self-correct, but it's going to take us continuing to be focused, and we certainly are.
Okay, any more reports from the board? Very well, Mr. Chair, Mr. Suso, you have your
Just a
report?
couple quick items. In the past week, I attended a meeting with Steamship Authority, Select Board Chair Brown, Bikeway Committee, Public Works, and others on this past Wednesday regarding proposed design elements at the end of the Bikeway in Woods Hole, and the meeting was productive and informative as efforts continue to best accommodate the significant volumes of bikeway traffic entering and exiting Woods Hole. And of course, we've already referred to the forum requested by Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito at the Little Pond Place, which we were pleased to attend and participate in, which appropriately shone a bright light on Little Pond Place and the accomplishments there that we see as a benchmark moving forward. And the board's next regular meeting will be Monday, August 9th.
Okay,
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn if there's
I move we adjourn.
any second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, very good, thank you.
Thank you.